to go live now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just pressed it. Oh, quick. We're live.
What? Whoa.
Normally there's like 5 seconds when I press the button. I pressed it. All of a sudden Google told me we're live. It's like, calm down. Okay. I thought I had that time to. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
How's it going? Brian's still eating his noodles. He thought, or pasta, I should say. He thought he had some more time, but here we go.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a really fun show.
Usually I eat half my dinner in the time between you when you hit record and when we're actually live.
Yeah. So we got Andy in the chat here. Cheering for the Bruins, I assume.
Oh, your volume just got way lower.
Yeah, because I moved away from the microphone for a second.
Why? To breathe?
To drink water.
Mm.
I got thirsty. But no, let's do the show. Oh, I'm kind of like, now I'm not sure if I should start or wait for you to finish shoving this in your. But anyways, Andy, so yeah, 1-0 Panthers. You know what? Maybe it's just not the Bruins' year. Maybe it's not like the best thing to win the President's Trophy. Like you work too, like, you know, you push too hard. Also, the Bruins kind of like, I think, which I'm sure isn't like, I'm not the only one who thinks this. They won the President's Trophy on the back of alternating their goalies all year. That was what worked for them. Why'd they have to succumb to peer pressure and play the same goalie every game in the playoffs? This is my opinion. Just a thought.
It's just a weird thing to not alternate.
It's just like, it worked so well, right? Oh well.
Yeah.
I'm at the point now where I'd rather the Leafs play the Bruins than the Panthers. I feel like the Panthers are hot. The Panthers are like they're on a roll.
Oh, you mean like, so I'm talking entertainment value. You're talking like Leafs fan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think both will be entertaining. I think as a like in Toronto, like it's going to be entertaining no matter what. Like, I mean, people are going to lose their minds here.
2-0.
Well, but now I guess it's good. I found out that I had a Linus Ullmark Young Guns PSA 10 card from back when I was collecting cards. Like I got a bunch of cards, like Young Guns of guys I thought were good. And I sent them all to what is it called? PSA, the company, the grading company. And almost all of them came back 9s or lower. And I was so mad that like I basically quit the hobby. But the 110 I got was Ullmark, but it was like Ullmark was nothing. It's like, you know, backup on Boston at the time. So I just, you know, threw it away, like put it in the box, moved, whatever, didn't look at it. Then I was like looking through it like a week or two ago, and I noticed I have Ullmark's PSA 10. And then I looked online and it was like worth a lot of money right now. Cause he's like, you know, he was like the front runner to win the Conn Smythe. He was like among the top odds of Conn Smythe odds going into the playoffs. But anyway, now he's pulled, but maybe that's good now. Well, now whatever. So theoretically, if Swayman blows it and then they pull him and bring Ullmark back and the Bruins come back and win, that could probably be good. But otherwise, I think I should have sold that card
on eBay tonight.
I should have sold it like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I blew it. This was the chance.
Maybe he's not going to Vezina.
Will he? I don't think he should.
Why not?
I don't know. Other people played a lot more. I'm more impressed with like a Saros. I think plays every single game.
Maybe the day he's nominated, you could try and
maybe.
Everyone
knows. Everyone knows that like by next year it's likely Swayman takes over. I feel like if he would have like led them to the cup, you know, that was really the big chance. Anyways, Brian, we could start, right?
I mean, Swayman hasn't been great tonight.
Yeah, but I mean, moving forward, like long term, I don't think like Ullmark's the long-term starter. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Pretty crazy that
no one could stop Panthers.
Neither team has their game 1 starter in that.
Yeah. Well, Bobrovsky at least it was the season game 1 starter. Who was the Bruins game 1 starter of the season? Maybe Swayman also.
I was oh no. I don't remember. I saw Ottawa's home opener. Swayman was in that against Boston.
Oh. Who won?
Ottawa, like 6-3.
Oh damn.
It was a fun game.
Probably looked like it's gonna be something that year. But that's okay. Ottawa will get a good pick next year.
Will they?
It'll happen.
Get like an app pick.
Apparently, like top like 15 in this draft is really good. We'll see.
I mean, if it's not Bedard, it's hard.
There's other good players, I think, from what I've heard. People are really drooling over this draft class. But yeah, Bedard, obviously. They're not going to get him. Do they even have a chance to get him?
This draft class over with. People have been drooling over it for so long.
You're not going to be over with it because then you're going to have to wait like 4 years for all these players to start like becoming superstars.
Yeah, but like I've heard for so many years, this draft is going to be so good.
Yeah.
The 2023 draft. Look out.
Do you think it's going to be a bust? Is that or
no?
You just don't want to hear about it anymore?
I'm ready to move on to what's the next draft I should be looking at.
You know, we didn't have this whole convo. I've just been waiting for you to finish your noodles after you told me.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's
Okay.
go.
All right.
Let's go. When did that?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Oh, how's your fan? Is your fan going hard?
No.
Okay. When your fan's going hard, let me know. We can do a nice pause. Okay. It's for noise cancellation purposes for anyone listening. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are hoping to pull a John Tavares and just bank one off someone's skate and in the net in terms of trying to take some fantasy value out of the first round of the NHL playoffs. I am your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me to look at everything that happened in round one up till now, Sunday night, and see what we can learn for moving forward, maybe for next season, dig in who were the busts, who were the great surprises. It's going to be a blast. And with me, to break it all down, the fantasy hockey robot, the poop-bob prognostication, the IPP MVP, the freaking brilliant genius who's going to round two, likely, of the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, my good friend Brian Com. How's it going, Brian?
I'm good. How did you know I was going? Were you checking up on me? Have you been looking at my team?
Guess, Brian, I look at it. I'm like I like to consider myself like the dad of all the patrons, and I'm like looking at everyone.
I feel very not patronized.
That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
I'm like big brother. Okay, I'm the big brother of all the patrons. I'm watching all the divisions. I know what's happening. I've already started setting up for round two. I know what's going on. And yeah, wow. Brian, looks like you're in the mix. Like
I'm in decent shape. Yeah, I'm in. I think I'm in fourth, or I'm fifth, but I'm only 2 points up of everybody who's not. But I have enough guys playing over the next couple games. But by the way, have you sorted the KKPP standings by points per game? Because
no.
Okay. Because I've been without Bergeron and without Scheifele. I've had two big injuries. I've played so many fewer games than everybody else. Anyway, enough about me. I'm happy to be here, Elon. Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all feeling good with your playoff pools so far. And if you're not, who cares, right? This is part of the fun of the playoff pools. You get in, then you either go deep, and no one cares if you go deep in a playoff pool, right? A playoff pool is unique that way, that you if you're going to the down to the wire, if you're competing to the end, you're alone. No one cares about you at all. You're just on your own path, following by yourself against maybe the one other person who's in contention. So congrats if you're one of those other people, and also enjoy yourself, and you don't need to follow anyone who continues to rise through the ranks. If your fate is sealed, by the way, a lot of favorites have won so far in the opening round of the NHL playoffs. So anyway, I hope you're in a good place, and I can't wait to get started and try and get some value out of. I like how you framed it, Elon. If we do learn anything from this first round, it will be a bit of luck, because it's such a small sample, and we're going to try and dig and see if anything good happens from what we can take away from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, last year we learned that Jake Ottinger is a stud, and that turned out that was true, right? And we talked about it on the podcast. We were like, I think that this guy's for real, what we've seen in the playoffs. And so there are some things you could learn to help you in drafts for next year, but there's also obviously going to be a lot of red herrings and things that you think matter, like Klim Kostin and his 3 points yesterday. I don't know if we're going to want to, assume that means big things for his career, but we'll dive into it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, Keeping Karlsson, proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. Got to hang out over there to follow everything going on in the playoffs. Great article still, even in the playoffs. And of course, the tools over at Frozen Tools are what I used to prep this show. Made a little spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet with a combination of the KKPP, ADP, so that's the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool. What's ADP? Average draft position, I guess. And so I've got the results of our drafts, and then I've got obviously the actual NHL stats that I got from Frozen Tools, and we're going to kind of cross-reference and see who were the picks that help people win. For those of you just joining us this week and weren't here for the last episode, the KKPP is a unique playoff pool where we redraft every round, so people weren't even caring about necessarily the team and if they thought the team would go far. Maybe they were caring if the team was going to go to 7 games in the first round, but it was just and like Brian said, he's in 5th or 6th. There were 12 teams in each division, and the top half, we're cutting half out, and then the top half of each division are going to move on to round 2, where we're going to redraft again. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the best picks so far, obviously we're not done round 1. At the time of recording, the Panthers are beating the Bruins 2-0, and so that's pretty surprising, and that winner of that series is going to play the Toronto Maple Leafs, which the Leafs technically were the favorites, but I think all of us are still pretty shocked to actually be able to say that the Leafs are going to round 2. So it looks like now potentially Panthers and Leafs, though. Brian, if you recall, when we recorded our patron cast last Sunday, we were talking about how things are looking really dreadful for Edmonton, down 2-1, and LA was up 3-0 in the game at the time that we finished recording. So it looked like LA was about to go up 3-1. Little did we know Edmonton was going to run away with that game and the rest of the series easily. So who knows? Maybe by the end of this conversation, the Bruins will be up themselves. But either way, that's still going. And then we've got the Seattle and Colorado tonight, and then of course the Rangers and Devils tomorrow to finish off the round. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, we'll talk through some of these surprises, and obviously the biggest surprise, the player that no one took in the first round. In fact, the earliest he was taken in any KKPP draft was 21st overall, and Rope Hintz right now is leading the playoffs in points, and it only 6 games. All these teams with 7 games, and I don't think anyone's going to catch up to Rope Hintz and his 12 points in 6 games. What a series for Hintz. This is after a regular season where he was obviously very good, 75 points in 73 games. This guy is someone who obviously people were already excited about for next season. Like he wasn't going to fall too far in drafts. But Brian, from what you've seen in these playoffs, and obviously, Dallas is going to continue on, and we're going to see more from Rope Hintz. But if he continues on this torrid pace, does he move up your draft board for next year? Like, is he even surprising? I mean, you must be pretty surprised, but of course this is like only 6 games. And if you look at the game log, 3 of those games were really impressive. There was one game, the 3 goals, 1 assist, the game 2, and then game 4 and game 5 were both 3 assist games. So yeah, Hintz came up big for his drafters.
For sure. And like he's not necessarily a secret, right? Like the big thing with Rupe Hintz coming into this season was, can he stay healthy? And this season he actually managed to it's actually like he played 73 games, but it feels, Elon, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I feel like it was 2 years ago and not 3 years ago. Like he played 80 games in 21-22. Was it that season or the season before where he was basically day to day every single night going back and forth? It must have been the season before. Yeah. Okay, feels more recent. Well, anyway, Rupe Hintz has now played 153 games over the last 2 seasons, which, if you do the math, that means he's missed just 11 games. And that's pretty solid. And in those 153 games, he's been basically a point per game player, just a little shy of a point per game player. But Rupe Hintz is good, and he's playing with players who are also really good, like Jason Robertson and Joe Pavelski, except Pavelski's been injured, but it's been impressive. One thing that we could have looked ahead to next year is saying, okay, well, if Hintz is no longer, like if that top line changes, are we worried that Hintz and Robertson can't keep going? And Tyler Seguin has been doing quite a fine job of filling in on that top line. Of course, he's still in Dallas, or signed in Dallas for the next 4 years at just under $10 million. So if Pavelski does not return, which I assume he still will, for as long as he can be effective, then
he signed a new contract for next year. Pavelski's going to be back, 3.5 mil.
Oh yeah, okay, it already happened. There you go. So so I think Rupe Hintz is in a good spot, and I'm not like totally surprised. I mean, of course, like I'm not. What do you want me to say? I'm not going to go in and say, oh well, 12 points in 6 games is unsustainable. He's been in on every goal while he's been on the ice. He's scored on a quarter of the shots. He's taken 2 goals on 8 shots, but he's looking pretty good. This is at 5-on-5, by the way, and his line is shooting above 10%. So great season for Hintz, and maybe it has bumped him up some people's radars. Like he was basically point per game this season, 75 points in 73 games, and maybe this just makes people a little more excited about Hintz come draft day.
Yeah, you kind of get that feeling like maybe this guy could actually have like another breakout, get to like 100-point player. It's possible. And I'm sure Jason Robertson is going to go so far higher in drafts than he did last year. And Hintz probably you'll be able to get at a discount compared to Jason Robertson. So yeah, so far Hintz looking really good. Maybe that discount is going to start fading. You brought up Seguin, Brian. We should mention 6 points in 6 games. So he definitely benefited from Pavelski being out of the lineup. He was on the top line with Hintz and Robertson and on the top power play. And yeah, even when Pavelski came back, Seguin had goal and assist in the second last game, an assist in the game 6 clincher. So yeah, Seguin, it's surprising and nice to see, I guess, that he's able to sort of show some relevance again. He was drafted obviously in the ADP for the KKPP for Seguin was way down. He was drafted like 100th overall. So he wasn't even taken in all the leagues. There were 20 divisions. He was only taken in 16 of them. And yeah, 6 points, nothing to sneeze at for sure. We'll see how Seguin does rest of the playoffs now that Pavelski is healthy. But yeah, nice to see him continue to be like at least pretty good. Like obviously he's not the Tyler Seguin of old. He ended this season with 50 points, very similar to the previous season. It's been already a while. It's been since 2018-19 that Seguin was like a point per game guy. Well, I assume we're not going to say anything about like he hasn't, though it makes me wonder, like if let's say Pavelski did get injured like game 1 next year, obviously I don't wish that on him. Like does Seguin, maybe Seguin does have it in him to be like this, like close to point per game guy, and it's just he hasn't had the opportunity, or do we think this is just like kind of luck, like very small sample, don't buy into it?
Yeah, well, one thing that's happened for Seguin is with Pavelski injured, he's been on the top power play, which was not regularly the case in the regular season. And of Seguin's 6 points in the playoffs, 4 of them have come with the man advantage. And I was probably remiss in not mentioning, Hintz is also feasting on the power play as well. Like Dallas was really successful in round 1 with the man advantage. So like that's a huge source of points for Seguin. So honestly, if I assume Pavelski's back and healthy and that line 1 stays line 1 in Dallas, I still don't know that Seguin can really outperform his like 55 point pace that he had this season without having more significant top power play time. Like basically he's been for the last 2 seasons, he's been power play 2 almost all the time with power play 2 like production, like decent, like high end power play 2 production, 13 points 2 seasons ago and 11 power play points this past season. But yeah, he needs more than that. He needs to like double those totals to be really fantasy relevant again. But he's never gone all the way to undraftable. But I'm picking Jamie Benn ahead of Tyler Seguin in drafts next year, just because I expect Ben to be able to continue hanging out in his spot on the top unit.
Yeah, well, I guess my question was more like does Seguin, could he be like, if he was given the same opportunity he used to have back when he was a superstar, would he be a superstar again? Like, I mean, so like
we've basically like decried the fact that that Seguin has not, like in Dallas for years now, been allowed to be the offensive player that he once was. Like his shot rates basically took a pretty big tumble after the pandemic shortened season. But even before that, like he was just more involved than he has been allowed to be in the last few years in Dallas. Like second power play isn't really helpful. But if you pop up to the top line, top power play, the question is, does he still got it? I think Seguin might still got it.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll ever find out. Maybe not.
It's like it's so funny, like because he and Taylor Hall, right? Like Tyler and Taylor, like from draft day, very similar fate where we saw they were still superstars, and then they get demoted. Pretty much like it felt out of nowhere for each of them at the time. And it seems like that's just where they're settling in the lineup, is secondary scorers instead of primary scorers, even though we never saw that primary scoring touch actually disappear.
Yeah, though, again, like Tyler Seguin, another thing that Taylor Hall has in common with him is he's also having a great playoffs. 8 points in 7 games now. Obviously this game 7 isn't over. I should update. It's now 2-1 for Florida. So maybe the Bruins were listening to me and are going to start their comeback. Krejci scored a power play goal, I guess, from the second power play. I wouldn't be surprised if Hall was on the ice for that, but he didn't get a point there, but didn't need it to be super valuable for anyone who drafted him. Like Seguin, he was drafted super late. Actually, they had very similar ADPs, 100.25 for Taylor Hall and 100.5 for Tyler Seguin. So I think a lot of people were like flipping a coin on the two of them, and you were, I guess, a little bit better off picking Taylor Hall there. So who knows? Maybe he's showing something, though. Boston has really been shaking up their lines like so much all series long. Like Bertuzzi's been all over the place. Obviously, like Bergeron missed time, like you mentioned before. But yeah, pretty wild. Like speaking of Bergeron, by the way, he's played like 3 games now, and it's like one point. I drafted him also. But anyway.
Yeah, like what percentage is he playing at? Right? Like that's exactly the question. And you can't, like, there's been a couple moments where they've shown, oh yeah, look, after this face off, Bergeron looks hurt. And so obviously he's limited in effectiveness, still worth playing, but I'm worried about him for the rest of this playoffs. And honestly, like, he's old. Be careful with Patrice Bergeron, like for his fantasy value next year, like assuming that he's going to give this another go, although we have no idea whether or not he will. But in the case that Bergeron does continue playing after this season, I kind of be better if the Bruins lost tonight, just so he could get a good proper rest and not risk doing any more damage. Although if the Bruins do advance, I also wonder if Bergeron takes off like the first couple of games of the series again until they see whether or not he's really needed. For Taylor Hall's part, by the way, he had 8 points in 7 games, only 1 power play point. He's still definitely on the second power play unit. And Hall's ice time is actually down like almost 3 minutes per game compared to how much he was used in the playoffs last year by Boston and how much he was used in the regular season this year by Boston. So like you said, Elon, it's probably a product of all these line changes that we've seen going on for Boston. But the thing that's working out for Taylor Hall is he's scored 5 times on 12 shots. So he's still barely shooting, fewer than 2 shots per game, 12 shots over 7 games. But good for him. He's scored 5 times on those 12 shots. So 42% shooting. Way to go, Taylor Hall. It's I like to see guys succeed. So even though it's in a way that, I'm not sure that this can carry forward at all, he has looked pretty good through the series. I'm glad he's getting some goals to go with that look.
Sniper, 5 out of 12. Maybe he's worked on his aim. But yeah, I also am not going to buy too much into this yet. Also, for these players that are going on to the next round, it's like we'll learn so much more from the rest of the playoffs. So Hall might not, like I said, Panthers are beating the Bruins right now. Man, there's so many places I want to go here. I feel like I can go through every player in the league. But okay, sticking with Boston quickly. Brian, you want to talk about the goalies first, or the defense? I have something interesting that I wanted to talk to you about both of them. How about let's do D. Let's do D first. Stick with skaters. In the KKPP, obviously McAvoy was taken first, which maybe wasn't even so like obvious considering that it was Lindholm on the top power play going into the series. And anyone who took McAvoy, can't complain. 5 points so far. In the 6 games going into today. But a lot of people took Hampus Lindholm. He was taken in all 20 of the drafts. I took him in my league. 0 points for Hampus Lindholm. Turns out the guy you should have taken if you were taking a swing on a D late was Dmitry Orlov. Orlov now has 6. He just got an assist today, so that means he's up to 7 points in the 7 games in this series. Man, why did I take Lindholm? And I think like this is going to really hurt Lindholm's draft value for next year. Like if Boston doesn't make it out of this round, like at the end of the season, I was like, wow, Hampus Lindholm looking great. Like he's potentially top power play now. He's bumped McAvoy, but I'm not excited to reach for a Hampus Lindholm when I just sat through 7 games so far of like just 0 production. Maybe you're more rather just wait till the very end, get Orlov with the last pick. Orlov is showing and Orlov was so good when he first came to Boston. Then he slowed down a little bit. I'm not saying Orlov is like a sure thing, but he's clearly showing that he has the ability to put up some offense here. Well, yeah. Wait, but actually before I guess, is Orlov signed for next year or is he a UFA? That's one thing I don't remember right now, but let me check just because maybe I shouldn't be like being like, oh, what's he going to do in Boston next? Yeah, he's a UFA. So yeah, who knows where he'll be, but wherever he goes, he seems like he knows how to get some points.
Well, does he though? Like in Washington, he did not show that he knew how to get some points. And in Boston, things just seem to really be working out for him. And like, I haven't totally been able to put my finger on it. Like his ice time is very similar than it has been through the regular season in Washington and in Boston. And I'm looking back through Orlov's career playoffs record. Like he had 7 points in his previous 19 playoff games over the 3 seasons before this one. And now he has 6 and 6. So I'm not sure. He had just 8 points, career high playoff points in the 24 game Stanley Cup run that Washington went on in 17-18. I don't know, Elon. I don't think Orlov is turning over a new leaf here. I think he's got a high points percentage, he's got a high points participation rate. So that's one thing he's got going for him. He's got everyone's shooting pretty well with him on the ice. I don't know, Elon. I'm not about to if I was drafting for next year today, I would still take Lindholm over Orlov because, well, I think Orlov might have, if he is with Boston, he might have a bit more upside just from being around a team that seems dominant and capable of putting goals in that, maybe more than Washington ever was with Orlov on the ice. I still think it's more a blip than anything. But it is stretching. It's stretching, so it's harder and harder to say that it's a blip. But I think it's a blip.
Yeah, that's fair. Our resident Bruins fan here in the chat here, Andy, is saying that Lindholm's been fanning on every single shot for some reason this series. So maybe he's just I don't know, not on his A game. Too bad. And then maybe that could be a reason why Boston loses the series. Who knows if Lindholm got 4 points in the 7 games like he was averaging in the regular season, maybe things would be different. But that's a shame, man. There's so much more to talk about with even just this series. A lot of interesting players. I guess let's take a quick break, and then we'll get to all of them. So you're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, we are back, Brian. Yeah, I want to talk more about the Bruins. Hope we'll go through the whole league here. We got a lot of time. What about Tyler Bertuzzi? Another pending UFA, just like Dmitry Orlov. And Bertuzzi, probably like Orlov, is making himself earning some money potentially this offseason, because he's really done well here in this playoffs. Up to 9 points for Bertuzzi going into today in only 6 games. We'll see if he could, extend that. He's been like all over the lineup, which I think is almost impressive. Like, it's showing that the coaching staff is deciding to put him where they need him. Like, he's gotten some top power play opportunities. Bertuzzi obviously had those really good years in Detroit with Dylan Larkin, but then when he came over to Boston at first, he was like being used as a third liner, like in the regular season. For Bertuzzi wasn't doing very much, and I wonder if people were thinking like, I don't know, is he really someone to sign long term? If maybe the Bruins don't even consider him like a top line guy. But obviously, this playoffs, if it ends today for Bertuzzi, it ends on a really high note, and I'm very interested to see like who's going to sign him for how long. Like, is he going to get like a big multi-year contract? It seems like the kind of player that people like want. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong about that. Like, gritty. I don't know. I just get a vibe. He's like net front for the power play, good at like tips and like, moving people out of the way or whatever. I don't know. I get the feeling like Bertuzzi's gonna get a long-term contract, but I wonder if you're going to be coming on the show when he does to say that maybe the team that signed him shouldn't have.
Well, I think someone might pay him for this playoff performance, and whether or not he repeats it or not is going to be the big question. Like, Tyler Bertuzzi is not like some young prospect anymore, right? He's 28 years old. So he'll be like, he turned 28 late February. So this season upcoming will be Bertuzzi's age 28 season. And sure, like, you could go ahead, like, he's had some great years, right? A couple seasons that he had a 75-point pace in Detroit a couple seasons ago. Before that, he'd never been much more than a 55-point player. Even though we did see the upside and potential this year, Bertuzzi was often buried in deployment. Things weren't going well. Just a 49-point pace with 30 points in 50 games between stops in Detroit and Boston. One thing that hurt him this year was less power play time. Another thing that hurt him this year, though, was his shooting percentage. He was shooting just 7.5%, which is basically half as successful as he shot in the 3 full seasons he played before this one. Remember, he only played 9 games in 2020-21 because, and that was after he scored 5 goals on, what was it, like 20 shots or something. He had a 25% shooting percentage. So Bertuzzi has flirted with greatness, but has not ever really stayed there in a sustainable way. And this season was a huge disappointment for Bertuzzi. But one reason to be optimistic about him is, well, in the playoffs, he is shooting more than he ever has, 3 shots per game. And he is scoring on 20% of his shots, 4 goals on 20 shots. That includes the 1 shot that Bertuzzi also has tonight, but he's had 5 shots twice in this series so far. And I think that's something that teams are pretty happy to see. He's also graduated to the top power play unit for ever since game 3 of the series, which is also another reason to think that, maybe another team is going to see that kind of value in Bertuzzi. So this has been a nice little, I don't know, re-coming out party. He went from buried in Detroit to front and center in Boston. He's making the most of it. I like that he's shooting more. And if a guy like Bertuzzi is shooting more and he can continue being like a high percentage converter, like, he's a 15% plus converter over his career. So if you keep taking 3 or more shots a game, you could be in real good shape for scoring goals and, of course, being fantasy valuable if you can keep that up. So obviously a huge part of this puzzle is where Bertuzzi lands next season, but he has definitely made a case to no longer be buried the way he was in Detroit.
Yeah, I'm definitely be watching for if the team he goes to has like an open spot on the top power play, like as the net front guy, because I think that's like his spot. So, if he's going somewhere where there's already an entrenched person, that obviously would hurt his value. But otherwise, it'll be fun to talk about once we get there. I guess we got to give some credit to Florida here and talk about some of their players. Obviously, the big star of the series, like star of the playoffs, honestly, like Matthew Tkachuk, just really, to me, Brian, maybe I'm like late to the party. Like, obviously, I've known Matthew Tkachuk is awesome all year, but like I feel he's really coming out as like, he's like to me, like willing the Panthers, like the Bruins are the team that were the best in the regular season, and the Bruins like were up early in the series. I just feel like Matthew Tkachuk, I just get this vibe from him. Like he's like just like a leader and just like, I don't know. I don't want to fanboy too much. I'm really impressed with everything I've seen from Tkachuk, scoring some big goals here, up to now 10 points in the 7 games. I don't know if there's too much to say about him. I think we've clearly already decided he's a star. He's going to be like probably worth drafting in the first round of drafts next year. I don't see why there'd be any reason not to. But Brian, do you want to try to guess? Well, I guess you have the sheet in front of you, but a pretty surprising player for second overall in points for the Panthers. Do you know the answer for this one?
I actually don't have the sheet in front of me.
Take a guess.
Is it Montour?
It is Montour.
Oh, all right.
A defenseman, Brandon Montour, after this incredible season, which maybe, like, I feel like as a fantasy player, I'm always like a little weird. Like if I were to go to drafts next year, I'd be like, well, Montour had such incredible year, 73 points in 80 games. Before that, he had never had more than 37. So am I really going to like think that this is like an age 29? But the thinking that you have, and like you just don't want to fully buy in to a breakout like this, but it's continuing into the playoffs. He continues to get top power play ahead of Ekblad. So, and the Panthers are, as far as they are, like, riding Montour. It's not as if like they've had any reason to be disappointed in him. Like, I just feel like going into next year, I think I kind of blew. There was in our keeper league, Brian, Dave was like putting Montour on the trade block for a while. And we're thinking like, yeah, he's probably going to want like a super high pick. He's probably not worth it. Maybe he was worth it. I'd be curious to know who he did end up trading Montour for, because he's looking like he could be one of these like top defensemen in maybe not top, but like in the upper tier of defensemen in fantasy with the numbers he's put up in the regular season, now continuing in the playoffs.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't expect to see from Montour in this postseason is 2 power play goals already and one of those came tonight in Game 7. So in about 6.5 games. So that's helped Montour. He has 4 goals now in the series, which is not something that I would expect to regularly see from him. But what we did see from him this season, I think we could expect to regularly see from him. It only took Elon, I think by late November, December, we were bought in on Brandon Montour because, like you said, we'd never seen him do this before, but he'd never had this opportunity before. And I don't know if you remember, but like the last season he was with Anaheim, it was like, oh, is this it? Like they have Montour. He could quarterback the top power play. I wonder how that would go. And then he was gone shortly after from Anaheim. And then he went to Buffalo and it's like, oh, well, Rasmus Dahlin was there, but still like, oh, I wonder if Brandon Montour, could have an offensive role there. Nope. And then he comes to Florida where he still didn't have that offensive role until that big opening happened with Ekblad. And now Montour has not only taken that role, but crushed. He had 33 power play points this year in 80 games and was taking 3 shots per game. So I'm with you, Elon, in that, like, if I've only seen a guy do it once and I'm not fully convinced, like, I think Florida's going to take the offseason to decide how do they want to share minutes between Montour and Ekblad. I don't think it's a slam dunk that they're just going to keep putting Montour up there. And I think that's the red flag for him. But if I had to guess, like if I was drafting those guys, I might try and avoid both of them because I don't like the uncertainty. But I think I would take Montour ahead of Ekblad because of all the success he's had. He's clearly shown that he can fill this offensive role, and he's had this pedigree his whole career. It's unfortunate it took him till his age 28 season to finally get in this kind of role. But now that he's here, it's hard to imagine Montour being taken out of it.
Well, yeah. And on the flip side, like you're saying, like you'll probably take Montour over Ekblad. And yeah, it's wild because going into the season, Ekblad, people were drafting him as like, a top defenseman.
He's a keeper on my team in the league you already mentioned.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I needed him as a keeper. And now I feel like I'm without a stud keeper D there.
Definitely. Well, and the playoffs haven't helped, just like Hampus Lindholm. Aaron Ekblad and Lindholm still both fighting. We'll see if one of them can get their first point of the playoffs. Like ridiculous, right? Ekblad was drafted in every league of the KKPP, of course. He fell to 88th overall on average, which I would have thought was like potentially good value, but no, terrible value because you could have taken anyone else and probably done better. Like Ekblad's stock has really fallen. And I'm curious, like, obviously you'll be able to get him at a big discount in drafts next year compared to what was going on this year. The question is, are you going to want him? And I don't know. It's just hard to, like he's Aaron Ekblad. He's a former first overall pick. He really had just broken out just a couple of years ago. Remember, it was like Keith Yandel on the top power play like forever in Florida, and finally Ekblad got the chance, and Ekblad like looked so good. It was like right away. As soon as he got the top power play, he was like ran away with like looks like a top like power like point per game guy. Like he was incredible. And all of a sudden this year it just completely fell off. And now going into next year, we've got a new Keith Yandel in Brandon Montour. And it makes me think that Ekblad might be a good late pick. He blocks a lot. Like he's got that good peripheral floor if you're in a league that counts that. But hard to bank on more than like 35, 40 points based on what we saw this year.
I think, I think maybe a reasonable comparison here is that Ekblad could be about to get pionked by, like Morrissey moves seamlessly into the top power play quarterback position. Like partway through a couple seasons ago, I was like, oh, well, does that mean he's going to stay there? Is because Pionk has been decent there, and Pionk has also been historically decent with peripherals too. And Pionk never got back up there. Of course, Pionk never had the same pedigree as Aaron Ekblad, but I don't know if that matters.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My baby fell asleep. Very excited.
Yes. Yes. I also ended kind of abruptly.
Okay.
Okay. Way to go. So happy.
Way to go,
for you
Noah.
guys.
Okay. Yeah, well, Brian, I'm glad you brought up Neil Pionk. Guess what? Neil Pionk has the distinction in the KKPP as being the player who wasn't drafted in any of the 20 leagues that had the most points. 7 points for Neil Pionk in 5 games. Obviously, most Winnipeg Jets,
right? There's
okay,
no
so
way.
right away.
Yeah. I mean, what could we expect from Pionk? Like reasonably. Let's
get his due for a second.
I'm trying to think of something. He's been a mid 30 point guy for the last 2 seasons. He had 3 power play points over 82 games, and that's from the second unit. Like usually you could get like, I don't know, 7, 8 from that spot as a defenseman. But Pionk had 4 power play points in 5 games in this series, and then tacked on another 3 at other strengths. So good for Pionk. But I just he surpassed in 5 games his 82 game power play point total. So I'm just not really counting on this lasting, especially since he didn't ascend to the top power play unit either. I guess did he? He was there for a couple games.
Well, Josh Morrissey didn't play the last couple of games. So that was maybe it's a Tyler Seguin situation. Like maybe given the opportunity, he could be really great, but going into next year, he probably won't. Too bad for Winnipeg that Morrissey wasn't 100%. What do you think about that whole Rick Bowness tearing into his team and telling everyone how terrible they are?
I mean, to me, it shows me a coach, and this was confirmed, right? Today, Shovel Day Off is like Rick Bowness will be back next year. But to me, it looks like this is a coach who has been given a mandate to solve a problem and fix a problem. And he's going to do what he needs to do to fix it. And kind of in a bulletproof situation. There's not a lot of coaches who could go on that kind of rant or tirade at the end of the season and without question, just continue in the job. But I'm pretty sure, Murat Atesh had a really great article for anyone like who hadn't been keeping up in Winnipeg. I've been in and out of it, but just sort of summarizing the whole situation, why this wasn't like Rick Bowness putting himself on the hot seat. This was Rick Bowness setting the tone for next year after a group of players who have clearly shown that they are not leadership material. They're not championship material. This is not a good mix. It's not the right makeup to have a team ready for a deep playoff run, and that they do need to break it down, start again with the right culture. And I think that's what the Jets want Bowness to be, which I guess is bad news for Cole Perfetti. I think it's bad news for Kyle Connor too. In the article, Atesh also broke down how, at the start of the season, there was some interest from the Jets, from guys who wouldn't normally be working defensively, like Kyle Connor, to really put in that effort. But then that wavered, especially in like critical moments of the game of the season for the Jets. And Kyle Connor's treatment by Rick Bowness got poorer, as did Scheifele's, as did Dubois, as did Ehlers, because of all these defensive deficiencies or a disinterested play or irresponsible, whatever. There's a lot of words to describe all the emotions that these guys displayed via their play on the ice. So I think for me, what this signals is I'm looking to next year. I might be a little concerned about drafting Winnipeg Jets. Like I'll take Josh Morrissey. We'll see who else is still on the team. Like Scheifele could be gone. Dubois could be gone. Wheeler could be gone. which leaves like what? Perfetti, Stasny, Ehlers.
Stasny's not there.
I'm just checking to see if you're paying attention. Yeah. So, and I don't know how much Kyle Connor, but I don't know if they're going to be given the same kind of leeway they had it multiple times during the year, because now it's absolutely, it's going to be Rick Bonus's way, not the player's way, and we know he's a defensive minded coach.
Well, we'll see. Maybe now all of a sudden, when the team decides that, okay, I guess we should probably try to trade, we don't want Scheifele and whatever Dubois anymore, then all of a sudden they'll go to Rick Bonus, like, hey, can you maybe do a press conference now and say how awesome they are so you can raise their trade value back up? Because I feel like you might have just hurt our chances. Like, everyone's been talking forever about how the Montreal Canadiens want to get Dubois, so maybe now's a good time to try to buy a little low on him. But I guess they'll probably wait and see if they get Bedard first. Maybe they don't need another top 6 center, depending on how this draft lottery goes. Okay, anyway. Blah blah blah.
Sorry, I could. Do you want me to respond? Okay,
up to you.
I'm good.
Where should I go next? By the way, speaking of Blake Wheeler, like, to be fair, Wheeler, I mean, points wise, he had 6 points in 5 games. He was a good pick for anyone who drafted him. I don't know if that's enough to make Rick Bonus happy with him. I know that Wheeler's the one who came out afterwards and said that he didn't like what Rick Bonus said. And now, I don't know, the whole, I like drama. It's fun. But whatever. Obviously, on the Vegas side, they won that series, running away with it. And Brian, you called it a little bit. Like, I remember it was on the last Patreon or the last show, or like a few shows ago, you were like, Chandler Stevenson is good again. And I was like, yeah, looks like it. And then I think we talked about how, like, if Mark Stone is back, and then if he could play with him. Anyways, Chandler Stevenson, another amazing pick. If anyone reached for him in the KKPP, he was drafted on average 73rd overall and rewarded his drafters with 8 points in 5 games. So definitely outplayed his draft position. And Stevenson is probably just going to continue to do well moving forward. I think that he's going to get drafted a lot higher in the next round, and I don't see why not. Right? They were rolling a line of Stevenson, Mark Stone, and Brett Howden. By the way, I guess I'm bearing the lead here. Mark Stone, holy cow, comes back from the,
I almost interrupted you, but yeah, Mark freaking Stone.
He's so good. He was injured. He a bad back injury, tanked Mike a couple of seasons. Well, a lot of things did, but his injury didn't help. And then he comes back on 8 points in 5 games. Like he didn't miss a beat. So good. And now they have these 2 lines, the Eichel line and the Stone line. Now this Vegas team is so much more scary. At the end of the season, I was like, we'll see how Vegas can do. Now all of a sudden with Stone, if he's actually 100%, and Brossois is actually playing, a lot of things going really. I guess Theodore's a bit hurt, so that's not good. And they're about to go against the Oilers. They probably want to have all their defensemen in there. So I'm not saying that I'm picking Vegas to beat Edmonton, but I think it could be a really fun series. And I think it definitely changes the complexion of the series to have Mark Stone in there and his 100% full capabilities.
Yeah, and when you say 100% capabilities for Mark Stone, for me, it's like he went from 0 to 100% in his capabilities. It's crazy what Mark Stone has been able to accomplish. Coming in ice cold, having sat 40 games, and everyone, maybe he wasn't actually that hurt. I believe he was. 2 back surgeries. I think I don't think this is gaps or convention here, and I think it's just really reassuring that Mark Stone comes back and is crushing it as well as he is. Of course, he's still an injury risk, so that's a bit of a concern. But I don't know. I had him as a keeper in the league, in the keeper league we're in, and we were trying to unload him towards the end of the year. And I actually just wrote my co-manager John Newholt, former co-host of the Stat Tech. I've been meaning to check. Do we still have him? Did we trade him? I cannot remember if we succeeded in trading him for what would be peanuts. Because if he's showing up and showing that this is Mark Stone, if he's showing up and that he can be a point per game player again, which remember he was for 4 consecutive years before these back injuries sidetracked him for, actually mostly the last 3 years. It's been a problem. He's always been a bit of a Band-Aid boy, but really he's missed half a season twice in a row now. So you want to be a little careful about being burned there. But I find the lines in Vegas really interesting. See Stone and Stevenson as a duo with Brett Howden, and then Eichel and Marchessault as a duo with Michael Amadio. And Eichel is doing well in that scenario, and so is Amadio and Howden, each with 4 points. Jonathan Marchessault is the one guy in the top 6 who's not producing very well, just 2 points in 5 games. But I find this line setup really interesting for Vegas, and I can absolutely they're succeeding. They're doing really well. They're one of the best teams in their first round matchups. So I could see this carrying over into next season. And to me, what it means is you've got Stone and Stevenson and Eichel and Marchessault, all with what should be guaranteed fantasy value, which we couldn't necessarily say before because of how Vegas kind of loaded up their top line. And when Marchessault was left off, we were kind of worried for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and like someone like Marsh, so I'm not too worried. It's probably just like a blip or whatever. Even like Eichel, you know, aside from that 1 3-point game, like hasn't done too much. But I just feel like Vegas obviously did what they needed to do to get by Winnipeg, and I'm really excited. That series against Edmonton is going to be so much fun. Brian, 2 Canadian teams going through. When's the last time that happened? Probably there's been some tweet about that. Everyone's talking about it for a long time, but very exciting that I feel like Edmonton and Toronto could be like the front. I mean, we're Canadians, but whatever. We love our American listeners, but I would be pretty. So remember back in the day when people would always say like, "Oh, Gary Bettman would be so mad if 2 Canadian teams made it to the finals, like the ratings would tank." Like, come on. I have a feeling like he'd be okay with McDavid versus Matthews in the finals. I don't think that's gonna like tank ratings.
Yeah, well, because Matthews is American born. Can you imagine
That's
all
the trick.
What do
That's
you
the
think,
trick.
by the way? I don't know if you like how much of this you've caught, but on the American broadcasts, whenever a guy touches the puck, they have like a little bubble above their head that appears with their name. It's like almost like you're playing a video game.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. I find it like fun, but also distracting, but also like, for anybody who's like sort of trying to get in the game and maybe has drafted a fantasy team, it's a good way to actually see when a guy on your team has the puck.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like I definitely have not memorized the numbers of every player in the league, and I play
Yeah.
fantasy hockey, so I watch a lot of games sometimes just to see how my like
Yeah.
players are doing. I don't only watch Leafs games, right? I watch like games from all over the league, so it is kind of handy to get like I'm retweeting a lot at game day tweets, right? Game day lines specifically for the lines. When a beat writer posts the lines with just like the players' numbers, is a sidetrack for sure. But like it's so annoying. It's like who knows these numbers? You're tweeting this just for I guess they just work for the newspaper or whatever. Even like the fans of the team though. Like I wonder if like do all teams like if you're a fan of the team, you know every single player's number, I guess.
I think you do if you follow them closely enough.
Yeah, I guess that's
But
fair.
if you're someone who just really wants to know about the whole league. Anyway, this is we're off track. I think it's cool, but I also think it's like a little like sad. Other sports don't need to do that, right? They have the technology. They could do it.
I mean, other sports are like what sports?
It reads like kind of thirsty, like kind of like second rate.
I mean, okay, basketball, they all
it's
are
the
not
same 5 guys on the court all the time.
And they're not wearing helmets, and like you can see their faces and their haircuts and everything.
True.
Like baseball, they're all in the same position. Like you kind of like know who's, and when the player's up at bat, they announce who it is. What is it? Football? Well, whatever. I don't care about football. Football, I'd be surprised I wouldn't be surprised if they showed something like that. But anyways, I don't watch that game.
There'd be no room on the screen. And like, who would they show? Like just like the same 4 guys on offense touch the ball.
Andy's saying here
like,
that football. Andy says football does that too.
Oh, okay. All right.
There you go. Anyway,
well, if they do it, then we're off track though. I don't know. I find it's cool, but I'm undecided whether.
Well, you don't like these. You don't like this technology. You've been like ranting on our Discord like all season about the ads on the side. You're like, get those ads out of the way.
The digital ads are extremely distracting.
Yeah, so you're getting distracted by any like technology.
Well, that's it. So like for perhaps some of the neurodivergent folks out there, it's tough.
Well, now you make me feel bad for making that voice. But anyway, okay, let's take a break and then we'll come back and talk. I want to talk about the goaltending in that Winnipeg and Vegas series. Okay, so we'll be back in a sec. Kirsten, keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian, and I want to talk about Laurent Brossoit, another one of these people who's probably earning a lot of money. I mean, I'm sure McDavid and Draisaitl have a good chance to take that money away from him by blowing him up in the next round. But man, Brossoit, like what a career comeback, like not only just in the playoffs. Like first of all, he came back in the regular season after missing so much time with that injury. And then he was in the minors for a bit. But then, with every other goalie on Vegas getting hurt, all of a sudden Brossoit came in 11 games. He had a .927 save percentage, was fantastic. Now in the playoffs, wins the series, .915 save percentage, not too shabby. He's taken over as the starter. Jonathan Quick I would be shocked if he gets a sniff at a game. I guess though against Edmonton, anything could happen. Maybe Brossoit gets pulled halfway through. But anyways, maybe I'm giving Edmonton too much credit here. But I'm really impressed with him, and I'll be curious. Brian, remember when we had that conversation about trying to name goalies that we think Ottawa should sign? I don't know if I mentioned Brossoit at the time, but he's a UFA. If Ottawa signed Brossoit like a 1 or 2 year deal, would you be happy about that, or are you staying away?
Yeah, I'd be open to it. I think I think a team is less likely to give him like a bigger or longer contract than Korpisalo. So Brossoit seems a little more like risk averse. Like you could probably sign him for a reasonable number for 1 to 3 years and see how that goes.
True. Yeah, with goalies, it's so hard to predict, but I'm happy for him, and it'll be interesting. Like, I guess Vegas probably won't re-sign him, right? They already have Thompson and is Aiden Hill. We'll have to figure this out in the summer. There's always the goalie carousel and everyone switches teams. But Aiden Hill doesn't strike me as someone who's going into a UFA. Oh, no, he is a UFA. Oh, so I guess Vegas just has Logan Thompson, and then we'll figure out all their other goalies, Hill, Brossoit, Quick, all UFAs. So maybe Vegas will. Maybe they'll get
Robin
Korpisalo.
Lehner's still.
Oh yeah, Lehner. I forgot about Robin Lehner. What's his deal? Has there been any news about him?
I don't know. Maybe you can pull up the latest on him, but all I know about Lehner is that like he's out indefinitely. Hip.
Yeah. I don't think that I've seen anything about him. So let's move on. We'll talk about him in the offseason if there's any news about Robin Lehner. Yeah, on the other side, by the way, when we were talking about that Winnipeg stuff, the one quote that made me the most sad was a Connor Hellebuck quote where he was like, I want to win a cup and I feel like my time is running out. Like, oh, well, good. It's hard. I mean, there's probably some really great goalies in the league that, at least Hellebuck's had the opportunity to really shine. But I guess that's credit to him, right? Because I think of like someone like John Gibson, who's probably actually been in a similar situation as Hellebuck in terms of like getting shelled a lot and having to play a lot of games. But like Hellebuck's obviously stood up a lot better than Gibson has. So Hellebuck's probably just a better goalie than Gibson. I think is not a very surprising thing to say.
Yeah, I think Hellebuck was so good in the regular season, but he was not in the postseason. Like he was. I'm looking at 18 goalies who faced at least 50 unblocked shot attempts. And he's only been better than Vitek Vanacek, who's like had an awful time. But Hellebuck is ranked 17th out of 18 goalies who have played a few games in the playoffs.
So Brian, we were talking about the Oilers before and like previewing the series against Vegas. In the series against the Kings, a lot of Oilers came through for the people who drafted them. Took a little while. Actually, it was like the last game where it was, Leon Draisaitl got almost up to catching Roope Hintz. Draisaitl ended up with 11 points in his 6 games. McDavid with 10 points. So you're not too upset with either of those picks. The next highest points guy on the Oilers and the top D in all of the first round, it's Evan Bouchard, man. And I feel like we called it. Like it seemed he's destined for this, right? Like just with this Edmonton top power play, Bouchard is just scorching 10 points in his 6 games. He was drafted like 47th overall on average. I'll bet you for round 2, because don't forget, like in these drafts, you have to pick 2D on your team, and now there's fewer teams to pick from. So definitely, I think Evan Bouchard becomes a really hot commodity here. I don't know. Like, I mean, I also start to wonder for next year, like how high. Like, isn't there a world where you're talking about him in a similar conversation to like an Adam Fox, Roman Josi, Cale Makar? Like,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah, I think there totally is. Like he has not missed a beat since coming up to that top power play unit. I'm counting, I have to do the math here separately, but 19 points in 21 games after Barrie was traded. And now in the playoffs, Evan Bouchard has 10 more points in 6 games. So what is that, Elon? 29 points in 27 games
That's very good.
Since Tyson Barrie's departure. That is incredible for Evan Bouchard. And we should all be like, I'm curious. I think my biggest challenge for Evan Bouchard coming into drafts, I want him. I just want to know how early I'm going to have to reach for him, right? Like to me, he's in the top tier. He is there. Like Cale Makar is still going to go first, I'm pretty sure. Then, you've got Fox, Hamilton, Josi, maybe John Karlsson still in that conversation. And then like Erik Karlsson, I think I take Bouchard ahead of Erik Karlsson, even after Karlsson's 100-point season. And like Montour is also like up in this conversation now too. Dahlin, like Bouchard belongs with all these guys. And I actually don't think he's at the bottom of that group either.
No, I mean, obviously like you have to consider like different categories and all of this, but like I definitely wouldn't take, like if I had the choice, of like Cale Makar in the first or Bouchard in like the fourth, like give me Bouchard every day of the week.
You're right.
Like,
It's just, can I get Bouchard in the fourth?
yeah, you're right. So it'll
And,
be
and
it'll be
how
fun to see.
excited, like I know how I feel about Bouchard. I feel like he's going to be a tough one to read in the draft room for where everybody else is on him. Because I got him. I mentioned, I don't know if it's on the Patreon cast or a regular show, but in our Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, like I got him late. Like he was my second defenseman, and like he was like one of like three guys left that I was interested in, and he's the reason. Like without Bergeron, Scheifele, and Pavelski, by the way, I also had on my team. He's leading my team in scoring. Actually, my two leading scorers I picked up with my two last picks, Bouchard with 10 points and Bertuzzi with 9, and we've talked about them both tonight. But yeah, Bouchard is way up there, and he's just a guy that I'm gonna try and read the room to see when I need to when I need to pull the trigger on drafting him. Because if I can get him, I'd say he's probably worth a third round pick at this point, which is kind of, we've talked, Elon, about, are we really going to prioritize defensemen, or are we just going to fade D? I think Bouchard is one of these guys we could probably lock and rely on. Also, I should probably add Josh Morrissey to that list of players that I already mentioned.
Hedman, maybe, probably not anymore. I don't know. Hard to say.
He's gone.
Like, I mean, the thing is, like, I want to say Bouchard is a lock for the top power play. Of course, we thought that a couple of years ago for Tyson Barrie, and then Bouchard took the job. But I just don't see anyone who, like, is Broberg gonna like steal the job? Maybe Ekholm. Is Ekholm like the best chance? But like Ekholm's not there for that. And by the way, Ekholm, such a great acquisition. Everyone's love it. If you want to see some good vibes, just search for the name Ekholm on Twitter, and then you just see everyone drooling over this amazing acquisition. Like the Oilers fans, like analysts, everyone says how like Ekholm like changed everything for the Oilers, and they love him. And hey, he was pretty good. He didn't get any points in the first 3 games of the series, then 4 points in the final 3 games versus LA. And obviously Ekholm's not there to get points. He's there to play big minutes and play well defensively and be a defensive partner for Bouchard at even strength. And yeah, good for the Oilers. You know, it's so fun because I'm so used to like making fun of like the moves that the Oilers make, but they've made some really good moves. Also, Nick Bjugstad, we should mention him, right? He was a really, unheralded, I guess, like acquisition at the deadline, but Bjugstad has found himself now like in the top 6. He was playing in the last game with Hyman and Nugent Hopkins, and he had a game of the point. Like, I'm not saying he's gonna like be worth drafting in fantasy. I'm just, I'm impressed with the Oilers making moves that help the team. So I don't know. Is that like mean to say? Are you with me?
Yeah, this is not something that they've been good at doing for the last several years. And it's almost like, had they just asked like any public trustworthy source, the answer would be like, no, don't do that. And they went out and did it anyway. And of course, they're still going to have to live with some of the mistakes they've made along the way. But yeah, the Oilers seem to have made the right moves. Like bringing in Evander Kane was controversial, but holy cow, he signed for $5 million through to the end of the 25-26 season. So like, that's amazing. And Bjugstad is going to be a free agent, but they brought him in at the right time for the right amount. I'm trying to look at like Klim Kostin. I don't know if you can call that skill or luck. In Ekholm as an ad also, and Brett Kulak added not long ago also. Like, yeah, the Oilers are doing good things, which like, I don't think it takes rocket scientists to build a team around McDavid and Draisaitl,
but it seemed like it did.
Yeah, and Nugent Hopkins, and like they also brought in Zach Hyman. But yeah, they made it look hard, but I don't think it had to be.
Yeah. Speaking of deadline acquisitions that have made a huge impact, we haven't really talked about the Leafs, and I think we got to. They've made historic. Brian, I need to go watch.
Leafs fans have already turned off this podcast in disgust for the fact that like we didn't lead with this story.
I did. I talked about how like they'll play Florida or Boston. I don't know. I did a joke at the start mentioning them. Yeah. But yeah, definitely it's like very exciting. I'm like in Toronto. I can't believe I'm going to get to go watch like a round 2 Leafs game, like at a bar. Like, it's just like, I never thought this would happen. It's going to be so fun. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to go because I have this baby, but like in theory, I can go watch a Leafs playoff game in the second round. I have a coworker who is like the biggest Leafs fan. And ever since I like moved to Toronto 10 years ago, he was like, he'd talk about the Leafs all the time. Then like 2 years ago, he told me like, man, I'm not watching any more Leafs games until they get out of the first round. I'm never like, he like totally just decided to stop watching any Leafs. And he was a huge fan. He's also a basketball fan. So I guess he just like, spent his time instead watching basketball. But like, I'm excited to, see him at work on Monday online and be like, okay, so you're time to finally watch. Anyway, okay. Leafs, what I wanted to mention is the Ryan O'Reilly acquisition. Okay. That's all building up to that. Another great move that obviously paid off for anyone who drafted him in the KKPP, right? 7 points in 6 games for Ryan O'Reilly. He is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, probably earning himself also a lot of money, like a lot, right? Because like he had a disappointing season with St. Louis and, nothing, looking like he's kind of washed. And now all of a sudden he's like, I don't want to say he's the guy who like, took Toronto to the second round, obviously, but it's like the acquisition of him, what's the difference between last year and this year? That's a big difference. Obviously, like Samsonov, like some defensemen, like of course, but I mean, I don't know. It's very exciting for him, and he did well. Do you think that he'll continue this moving through the rest of the playoffs? Like the lines that Toronto rolled in the last game weren't good for O'Reilly. Like if this was like a regular season podcast, I'd be like, he was playing with Achari and Bunting on, I guess, the third line, and the Leafs were rolling Matthew Nyes with Matthews and Nylander, who, by the way, Nyes on the ice for all 3 overtime goals. Like this is a prospect that people have been excited about for a while, and he's coming through in the playoffs. Leafs are exciting. I'm just going to talk about. Brian, I don't even have a question.
You're just going to talk about. There's lots to talk about.
Marner led the team in points. Like, remember and Marner kind of like
Austin
choked.
Matthews showed up and scored some big goals too. Like, there's a lot of ghosts being slayed. Like my question, watching the Leafs win and celebrate, and go for it. You deserve it. It's been a hell of a long time. So yeah, let it all out, Leafs and Leafs fans. I just can't imagine like there being a bigger celebration than that. Like that was it. And I'm curious to see how things carry into the second round. Like now that that's over with, are we like totally through it, or do we now have to like enter the phase of like, okay, now we have to fight like this round? Like now we're anxious and worried and whatever kept us out of the first round, getting past the first round is now going to reappear. I don't know. I feel like it's all like it. It was all so improbable and unlikely that the Leafs failed, and also in the manner that they failed over the last several years. I don't think this team is like starting from zero in the second round here at all. I think they're a legit cup threat. I had them going all the way to the playoff finals in at least one of the brackets that I created. The playoff finals, the Stanley Cup finals. Who am I? Do I know what hockey is? Am I an AI? Whatever.
Well, I also like how you were like the way you said it. It sounds like you made like a whole bunch of brackets. Like in one of my brackets, I have the Leafs going. It's like, well, maybe you have every team going.
The truth is, I actually can't remember what I did in my final bracket, but there was a version of it that had Toronto. It was Toronto or Carolina making it to the finals. I don't remember who I ended up going with between the two, but it could have been either one. But yeah, huge series win for the Leafs. Obviously goes without saying. Elon, I feel like it's a little cruel to you that you've just wanted to party and like enjoy a Leafs run, like go out to bars, watch games in Toronto for so long, and now that's actually happening. I mean, you have a little less opportunity to do that. How are you handling that?
I mean, I'll be fine, but I might sneak out at some point, right? Like I think I have a good excuse to at least go watch one game. But yeah, I'm not gonna be able to like go out and party every single game, unfortunately. By the way, the Leafs opponent still up in the air. The Bruins just scored again, Brian. A couple people we already talked about on the show. Bertuzzi, power play goal. Orlov, another assist. Or oh man, I don't know, 2 UFAs. And Krejci, the other assist, another UFA. I've been talking a lot about UFAs over the past while on like this show, the Patrioncast.
Just getting ready for July.
Well, yeah, I mean, the off season is so fun. Like, obviously there's going to be a slow period for the podcast where there's not going to be much to talk about at all. But then it's so fun when there's all those signings and the trades and everything. We got to really stretch that out more. I feel like we do like 2 episodes and then we're kind of like done. I feel like we need to like talk for like 30 minutes about each trade and just talk about overall summer. But then I want to get all the takes out right away. Okay, we'll figure this out. Brian, speaking of figuring things out, I think we figured out pretty good first half of our episode here tonight. It was a lot of fun, but we've been going for an hour. So why don't we take a break, end part 1. Thanks to everyone for listening. Make sure to check your podcast feed and you should have part 2 waiting for you already. Assuming that everything works well. We're actually on a new podcast network. This is the first episode we're posting as part of the Spreaker podcast network. So thanks for Spreaker for, working with us. And hopefully people have been getting these episodes that we're recording tonight. But yeah, assuming that everything worked well, then part 2 should be there. And we're going to keep talking. I think like I've been talking about too many guys who did well. Let's start part 2 with some disappointments. The players who were drafted high and let their drafters down here in the first round. So we'll get to that and a lot more in part 2. See ya. All right. That was fun. You good to go? Yeah, one more hour as
Yeah,
scheduled.
maybe like 45 minutes.
45. So what one ad, like I just need to know in terms of ad breaks, like how many ad breaks do
I
you want me
think
to take? Just one ad break
I'd
then?
love
Or
to do just one.
oh,
Is that
okay.
okay with you?
Hey, I mean, we don't have bosses anymore like before. Now it's up to us. Now we're the boss.
Okay, we can do two, and maybe it'll still come up short of an hour. But
Okay, we'll see. All right.
Yeah.
I'll do the next ad break at 9:00 and we'll go from there.
we're not gonna do three ad breaks, huh?
Well,
Not
not tonight. We have to
not
figure out.
tonight.
I don't know. We need to like do I don't know. They say we can do it. I don't know. For anyone watching this live, our new podcast partners told us we should do 3 ad breaks in a 1 hour episode and have like 3 ads in each ad break. Seems like a lot.
Seems
But,
like a lot.
I don't know. Maybe people don't care. I mean, you just forward it anyways, right? I got on my headphones. One of my headphones, I do double tap, goes forward 30 seconds. And my other one, I go like this, bloop, 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 and it goes forward. So easy. I never listen to ads. So cool. I'm so cool. Such a rebel. Don't listen to ads. Okay. Let's start the show.
Why isn't there an ad block for podcasts yet? Like somehow blocks them as you download.
Why do we even want to put that into the universe?
Yeah,
Brian? We go out of
sorry.
business.
That would hurt us. Well, no, it's not. Well, like, oh, right. Because if ads don't get, like, they'd probably just measure how many ads get served and everyone blocking the ad.
I don't think advertisers are going to keep paying if they know
Yeah.
that people are blocking
Okay,
ads.
please listen to our ads. I hope
Well-
they're good. Remember when we got one taken off because they were
Yeah.
swearing in it?
It wasn't even
Could you
like an
imagine if
ad
we
for
were-
a product. It was just like
yeah, it was for
preview of a
another
podcast.
podcast. Could you imagine if we recorded a promo for our podcast where we swore?
well, I don't know. I know you can't imagine that, but
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's not like swearing isn't that big a deal, but I know for some people it is.
No, but it's,
I was actually trying.
if you're
Can I swear
if you're
now?
putting your best foot forward,
No, of course,
for a new
yeah.
audience.
I thought of like it would be really funny. I won't swear, but like I don't want my daughter, to like swear growing up. Like obviously, like it's like not a good look or whatever. But like I was thinking it'd be funny if like she just, I don't know. I was thinking it would be funny if like she just said the phrase "f off," like when when someone is like really annoying. I don't know because I haven't watched Succession. Anyways, it'd be funny if like she thought that was the only time that word is used in that one saying, and then she just say that. It'd be cute. I don't know. Anyway, let's start this part 2. Okay, let's go. Brian, I'm gonna do so you can prepare. It's gonna be a Kaprizov, Timo Meyer, and who's the other? I had another good. Oh, and Panarin are the
We
first
talked
3 I'm
about all
gonna
these
do.
guys on the.
Yeah,
okay.
but I mean, it's for the. We didn't talk about Panarin. I'll start with Panarin. Okay.
Start with whoever. And like
Yeah.
there's literally, I think this is a very you show.
Sure. Well, I'm telling you now, so you can have them ready. I'm gonna start with Panarin.
Yeah, I'll have them ready, but you. Yeah.
All right. So it's gonna be those 3.
Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously other Rangers and players on those teams. as
Wow.
well.
3-2 Bruins. Just like that.
Who scored? Oh, I'll figure it out. Okay, I'll just do the show. I don't need to-
Pasternak.
He's so good. Yes, welcome that's terrible. I need to do it not in like a. I feel like I'm doing it like a sensual. Like I don't mean to be sensual. I'm trying to be like
ASMR.
public radio. Like I'm trying to just be like a chill radio guy, not like a.
So I think what
trying
you
to make a
need to
sexy
do
voice.
then is you need to start you need to do like kind of like abrupt starts and starts.
Can
And
you
we're
give me an
back.
example? Okay, that's
Part
right.
2 of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast.
Okay.
I'm Elon Dabrowski.
Maybe you should do
and-
it. You've got it.
And earlier we talked about,
Brian, do you want to just do it?
No, not really.
It was so good. Okay, I'll just copy what you just did. We're back. Part 2 of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast. This is the first episode that we are recording as part of the NHL playoffs. The first round almost over. We've been covering plenty of players who have been very impressive in this round. But moving forward, we're going to start talking about some disappointment, some players that really let their drafters down. Brian gave me some tips on how to sound more NPR and less like, I don't know, creepy uncle in my part 2 start.
Use the word sensual.
Yeah. Anyways, hopefully everyone's been enjoying the show so far. Brian, how are you doing an hour into a podcast? Do you think that have we come away yet with any takeaways that are like valuable for like for our drafts next year, or still like kind of everything?
Yeah.
Like I feel like Evan Bouchard were like even higher on than we would have been.
I
before,
think
right?
Bouchard. I think Stone Stevenson. I think maybe Laurent Brossoit.
Hmm.
And I think depending on I didn't care where Tyler Bertuzzi signed, right? Before going into these playoffs. It didn't matter. Whatever. Like you'll just be like some middle six guy, probably on the second unit. But now I care where Tyler Bertuzzi signs after what he's done this playoffs, including he was in on the tying goal. I think he scored the tying
Yeah.
goal for Boston, who has now the Bruins have now pulled ahead 3-2. And they have all the momentum. Like Florida, I think, had like 8 shots in the first half of the first period. They have 19 shots, and we've got 15 minutes left in the game.
Man, I feel bad for Panthers fans who, like, obviously knew the results of the game when they listened to this on Monday and they hear us at the start being like, oh, it looks pretty good for the Panthers. And they just hear it like get worse and worse. And who knows? Hey, maybe the Panthers will tie it up at some point. I mean, now I have to, anti-jinx them like I did for the Bruins earlier. But yeah, Brian, let's talk about some people who let their drafters down this year. I want to start with a guy whose series isn't over yet. Over on the Rangers, there's been some amazing performances on New York, right? Like that line with like Zibanejad and Kreider, like so good. Like Kreider is among the top of like point getters, 9 points in 6 games so far. But surprisingly, the guy who was probably taken first, I think the highest ADP of Rangers, because this is only points, right, would have been Artemi Panarin. Where the hell has this guy been? Only 2 points in the 6 games for Panarin so far. We'll see if he can break out big time. The Rangers obviously could use a big breakout in Game 7 to help push them past the Devils. Is this just been like a kind of thing where Panarin has been like valuable to the team, but just not showing up on the score sheet? Or has he just kind of been a bit of a bust and a big reason why the Rangers weren't able to close this out after they were up 2-0 to start?
I would say Panarin probably doing roughly what he'd normally do. Like I think he's just been unlucky. He's only been in on a third of the goals scored while he's on the ice. The Rangers are like, and he also hasn't scored on any of the shots he's taken. This is all at 5-on-5. But yeah, like Panarin seems to be shooting at a similar rate and putting up expected goals at a similar rate, but hasn't scored yet on 8 shots when maybe we could have expected him to score. Well, I mean, at least once on those 8 shots. And he's only been on the ice for 3 goals at 5-on-5 too. So yeah, things just haven't gone super smoothly for him. As with, I think, the rest of the guys you're about to bring up, I'm not about to think that all of a sudden they're washed and that things aren't going to work out for them anymore. I think this is just a little blip for Panarin, and I'm not so. I don't think this is a sign of things to come here. That Panarin is no longer as valuable as he once was.
Yeah, maybe if anything, this helps his value. Like, in terms of you can get him for cheaper in drafts next year if people are worried. Though, I mean, I would be concerned a little bit. Like looking at the lines, obviously this is just the last game. The Rangers have been changing things up. Last game was Panarin with Hedel and Kakko, and then Kane, Trocheck, and Lafreniere, and then Zibanejad, Kreider, and Tarasenko as like the main line. So, they're stacked. They're able to like play around with a lot of combinations. But right now, you just want the combination with Kreider and Zibanejad and like Tarasenko hanging out with them for now.
Yeah, and you can't even like read a whole lot into any of the lines right now because like Tarasenko and Kane are UFAs, right? You're talking about how into UFAs you are.
Yeah.
So like the makeup of this team entirely changes in the offseason, assuming neither of those guys is coming back, nor are they being replaced. So again, not going to read too deeply into line combos here or player performance. It's just been a bit of a slow going for Artemi Panarin.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, Adam Fox, another guy who's been having an amazing series, so we definitely should call him out. But yeah, another disappointing player now moving to another series. Let's go to, actually, no, let's stay in this series. Actually, let's go to New Jersey. Timo Meier, pointless in 6 games. I know we talked about it on the Patreon cast last week. That was after like 3 games or so, and he had been doing nothing. And you said it's just a matter of time before he breaks out. All the underlyings show that he's just like getting unlucky, whatever. Like no goals being scored while he's on the ice or whatever. Like whatever you look at. So now, like, we've got more games now. Now we've got 6 games of data. Still no points for Timo Meier. Another free agent, obviously going into next year. Just an RFA though. Like now, should we be worried? Like maybe he just like had some magic sauce over in San Jose, and maybe I don't know. I'm curious to get your take because I know you obviously you could just say the same thing you did on the Patreon cast, which not everyone heard. So I'm sure people will be interested to hear it. Or I'm curious if maybe you've changed your tune.
Yeah, Timo Meier is still like really, really good. Only Jack Campbell has taken more shots than Timo Meier in the playoffs. Timo Meier has taken.
Only Jack Campbell has taken more shots.
Only Jack Hughes has taken more shots on goal than Timo Meier in these playoffs. He's got 29. Meier has 26. Meier has 3 expected goals, none. Like, of course, 0 actual goals. And Meier, and this is at all strengths too, like including on the power play, Meier's only been on the ice for 3 goals scored. And he clearly has not picked up a point on any of them. Also, while Meier's on the ice, and again, this is counting all strengths, the Devils are shooting just less than 4.5%. So all of this tells me the same thing that I mentioned on the Patreon cast and on the show the week before, 2 weeks before, is that maybe I can just get some good value from people who do not believe in Timo Meier being good outside of San Jose. This is like, look, this is a pretty hard and serious snake bite, but I'm not deterred. Like, he was a late first round pick in lots of leagues this year, and even in the second was considered too, like pretty widely. So the fact that he's still taking over 4 shots per game and everything seems to be going well under the hood tells me that this is just bad luck for Timo Meier, and the selfish part of me hopes it continues so that I can get him for better value than I should be able to in drafts next year.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you said the same thing and it was very compelling last week. And he continued to not get points. So I guess we'll see. Curiously, I'd love to see
I
get a hat
can't
trick
say
in
that
game
he's
7.
like everything's gonna go well for him next game, but like easily,
yeah.
the floodgates could open or the floodgates could stay closed. Like it's really, I would advise against looking too deeply into anything that happens in the playoffs. Right? These are all small samples. Everything changes all the time. You've got the best teams against the best teams. You've got teams playing each other 4 to 7 times in a row and being able to focus solely on one another and to shut down one aspect. But this is the thing, though. Timo Meier isn't even being shut down with all that, with all that context. He just
he's being shut down by Shesterkin, who's stopping all of his shots.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's that. So maybe you could say Shesterkin's just getting the better of him. But even then, like Shesterkin's getting the better, like, I said his teammates are shooting 4.5% while Meier's on the ice. So, do the math. And that means Shesterkin has like a 955 save percentage while Meier is on the ice. So good luck. And again, that's not going to be a situation that repeats itself through a whole series in most circumstances, let alone an entire NHL season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. So you got a pick, by the way, for who's going to win that series tomorrow? By the way, I'm very annoyed that game is like at 8 p.m. tomorrow because I got to set up all the KKPP round 2 drafts. We want to give people enough time to draft before the second round starts. Why can't they start at like 6:30, like 8 p.m.? Come on, man. And it better not go to overtime. I'm going to be very annoyed. But anyway, yeah, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow between the Rangers and Devils if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I was going to say Devils, like they're who I had at the start. I went Devils heavy in my KKPP, which is just another reason why I'm surprised if I make it to the second round. But the Rangers, I mean, it's the same thing we said at the start of the season, right? Devils are up and coming. A lot of guys getting their first taste. Rangers are experienced. They might have a little bit more of that grit. So we'll see how that all comes into play in game 7. I think I'm going Devils, and I assume Akira Schmid's getting the start. We were talking about
so good. Yeah.
So good. So the playoff goaltending in terms of performance above the goalie's expected Phoenix save percentage at 5-on-5. Shesterkin far and away above the pack. Then you've got Philip Gustafsson and Ilya Sorokin and Laurent Brossoit all together, or close enough. Each about 20 save points above their expected number, which is crazy, right? That 2 of those goalies are eliminated despite their best efforts, and like 3 of the top 4 goalies could be out, which is crazy because like we're always like, oh well, playoffs is all about goaltending, and even goaltending isn't gonna necessarily hold these teams in it. And then
it may be if Minnesota would have actually played Gustafsson instead of putting Fleury in for a game, maybe things would have been different.
Clearly a mistake. A couple interesting, and with these goalie rotations becoming more of a thing in the regular season, it's really interesting to see like mistakes happen or potential mistakes. Like we were talking before the show about the Bruins stopped alternating Allmark and Swayman, which served them really well all season long. And now they find themselves in game 7 against Florida. Maybe it's not the only reason the Wild played Marc-Andre Fleury when Gustafsson had clearly been the better goalie. Anyway, this is all to say, so you've got Shesterkin, Gustafsson, Sorokin, Brossoit, and Akira Schmid rounding out the top 5, and Schmid is about 17 save points above his expected number. Next best interesting guy. This is so interesting. I'm going to keep reading them. Sergei Bobrovsky, 12 save points above. Eunice Corpusalo, 12 save points above. And then you've got Jake Ottinger. And then there's a bunch of guys who've still played well and above their number, but not so far above their number like the rest of this group. But Akira Schmid, what a revelation, huh?
Yeah, I think it's Schmid. But
Schmid. Yeah, I think so
amazing.
too.
He's I traded for Nico Dawes in my dynasty league last summer, thinking that he might be the future for the Devils. Didn't see this coming.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine Vitek Vanacek might have been traded and acquired by several teams who thought he would be the goaltender in this upcoming big Devils window. And Schmid might have just popped that bubble. I mean, Vanacek popped it himself. He was so good. Remember, Elon? It was like, oh well, we can't trust him to be consistent. He wasn't consistent forever in Washington. Then he played like 3 or 4 really, really solid months. We're like, he's got it. And then he didn't play consistent again for the rest of the season, and that's continued into the postseason. So if we did bite on Vanacek being someone you could rely on, I think his track record eventually won out, even though he hung on for a little longer than he usually does in playing well consistently.
Yeah, and I guess, if the Devils go forward, maybe Vanacek gets another shot. But yeah, Schmid is definitely the guy right now. All right, Brian, I still have more people I want to talk about. Of course, we'll take a quick break, and then we will go to another really disappointing player who was drafted super high, even in the first round of some KKPP drafts, to only get 1 point. I'll leave it as suspense for people to try to guess who I'm talking about. I'll be back in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about the Rangers or the Devils. Oh, I remember now. Oh, I should actually, Brian, I'm not going to do that ad break just yet. I'm going to say one more thing. By the way, one last thing about the series of the Rangers and Devils. You said how you're not too worried about any of these Rangers who haven't been doing anything. I'm going to admit, I'm starting to be pretty over Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere, both pointless so far in the series, and just or maybe Caco got a point early on, but I don't know. I've been waiting so long for these two. Sometimes they break out, go kid line, I don't know. Maybe they're still young, but man, so far they seem like busts. Prove me wrong. Tell me you disagree.
Yeah. Well, I think the burden of proof is on them. We saw Kako and Lafreniere take steps forward last season. I think again, Tarasenko and Kane being in the picture has decreased the number of opportunities that they might have and the degree that the Rangers might choose to lean on Lafreniere and Kako. So I'm still open to them being really great. But yeah, I'm curious, Elon, if Lafreniere is probably once again a late round flyer going into next season, and it might be his last chance at being okay. Here's one. We talked about Tyler Seguin at the start of the season, pretty reliable 50-55 point guy, shown he could do really well if he gets an opportunity due to injury, which hasn't happened a whole lot in recent years. Who would you take late in you take Seguin over Lafreniere?
Of course. I don't know. I mean, Sagan's point per game in the playoffs. He's showing himself to be a real stud when given the opportunity. And like you said, even when he wasn't given the opportunity, he was still rosterable. I don't think I would have held Lafreniere at all this season.
Yeah. So it's taking that swing or taking the sort of guy who's likely to land at the bottom of your roster for most of the season, but at least be somewhat reliable there.
Yeah. Plus, don't forget Dallas, sometimes teams get injuries, right? Now we've seen that Seguin could really step up if there is an injury. Joe Pavelski's not getting any younger. So maybe, obviously this wasn't the type of thing that you expect to happen again, but I don't know. Yeah, that's my pick. Anyways, Brian, I still got one more player who has been super disappointing. I was drafted even in the first round of some KKPP drafts that probably cost some people their chance to go to round 2. So we'll get to him and a few more people in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian. I want to go next to the Minnesota Wild, who had that disappointing end to their series against Dallas. Though, Dallas was the favorite going in. I do wonder if they would have played Gustafsson in that second game, maybe things would have been different, but we'll never know. But probably one player who did not help things for the Wild was Kirill Kaprizov, who had such an incredible season. And I don't know if it was just Like, I'd be curious to know, like, what happened here. So he ended up with only 1 point in the 6 games, like basically a non-factor. He scored a goal in basically the first game, and then after that, no points the rest of the series. Was this a thing kind of like, McDavid in past years, like the teams were just able to focus on him and like clutch and grab, and maybe he was like, not being able to do his thing, or did he just choke? I didn't watch a lot of these games, unfortunately, Brian, but on Twitter, I did see like a lot of people saying like, oh, it's just a matter of time. Kaprizov's going to have a big game. Never happened. Now the Wild are out. And yeah, what happened here? Like, it's such a shocking result for a guy who paced for like 100 points, give or take, in the regular season. 92 points, I should say. 75 points in 67 games, 92-point pace in the regular season. This, it's like Alexei Yashin. Remember him on the Sens? Have like these great regular seasons and totally disappear in the playoffs. I was like, I'm very shocked by this result. I never thought of Kaprizov as someone who could disappear. He's like always consistently gets points.
Yeah, and if I don't want to give the Yashin edit to anyone in particular, there was
he's got to have a couple years to do this first.
Yeah, and he's also got to look disinterested. And I don't think Kaprizov looked disinterested over the course of the playoffs. I think he looked frustrated, but he was still doing the thing that he usually does. Over 6 games, I mean, he only got 9 shots on goal at 5-on-5. But if you look at all strengths, like that's actually not so inconsistent with what you'd expect from him. 17 shots over 6 games, so almost 3 shots per game for Kaprizov. 3 expected goals, only 1 went in, and 0 assists. And that's because somehow, he only managed to somehow. Kaprizov only managed to point on 1 of the 6 goals that were scored while he was on the ice over 6 games. And like 6 goals over 6 games is not a ton of opportunities to point. And the one that Kaprizov did point on was the one he scored himself. But he did not pick up a single assist and was shooting a bit below his usual shooting percentage. So put those 2 things together, and that's what went wrong for Kaprizov. Again, I am definitely not about to call him Alexei Yashin in the games that I watched. He still looks like he was trying. I think we have to give some credit to Dallas for shutting him down to some extent, but also just the fact that things didn't bounce his way.
Yeah, I guess fair. Yeah, we'll see as things move forward with Minnesota. If they, Minnesota's in a tough spot, right? They have these like cap hits still from Suter and who's the other one? The big Parise.
Parise.
Yeah, they weigh both of them. So like, it's pretty impressive that they came into the playoffs with a team that I thought could do something. Like Matt Boldy obviously really broke out at the end of the regular season. He also kind of had a disappointing playoffs for what it's worth. Boldy only 3 assists in the 6 games. But yeah, I'm still super stoked to like draft Matt Boldy next year. I think he's like the type of guy who's probably going to fall in drafts further than he should, just because it was his first time doing it, and like it was only like a short stretch. But I don't know if you agree or disagree. I feel like Boldy is someone who I don't have any doubt that he's going to be incredible next year. Like,
no,
I mean at least point per game or 70-point pace, I'll say.
Yeah, Boldy has arrived, and I don't think you're going to get him at great value in drafts with like, people who might listen to this podcast who are like into fantasy enough, because like he came up and like he broke out, I think, in a pretty loud and noticeable way. Eriksson Ek, I bet, is someone you could still get value on in Minnesota, because he's still not quite that like household name that people know you can rely and depend on. Of course, the upside is lower, but I'm gonna guess that you could still get Eriksson Ek at better value than Matt Boldy in drafts going forward. And Elon, just one more thing, like for why Minnesota might have not looked great, like you mentioned Kaprizov and Boldy. The Stars at Ottinger had a .924 save percentage in all situations against the Wild, which means the Wild shot about 7.5% in all strengths, including the power play. So they were just shut out. Like that's it. They had actually the Wild, I'm just looking at the numbers here. They had, through the first round, they had the 3rd lowest shooting percentage. Only 3 teams shot lower than 8.5% at all strengths. The Wild at 7.6%, the Canes at the same number, and then the Devils have barely shot above 7.4%. And then the Devils have barely shot above 7% at all strengths, and they've also had some of the worst goaltending too at all strengths, just an 896. So it's amazing, actually. If the Devils get through this and their goaltending evens out and their puck luck improves, they might be a pretty surprising combatant. But of course, they'd be playing the Hurricanes, who also have had some shooting woes. So it could be a fun series where either both team is going to continue to defensively clamp down on one another and deny opportunities, or maybe like we talked about earlier, floodgates could open.
Yeah. So Brian, I don't know. I should probably like say a thing.
I don't think so.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, some floodgates we expected to open were in Colorado, right? We thought that Colorado was just going to destroy Seattle. I feel like that was the series when we were doing our preview, that we thought that Colorado probably is the team that has the best chance to like maybe sweep or like win their series easily. Seattle has obviously made it very hard on them. We're going to game 7 later tonight. I guess it's about to start in around a half an hour. Pretty excited to see how this goes. Looking at the Seattle, it's so this is like just how Seattle's been all year. So nothing changed. Like there hasn't been like any players who were like incredible. Like their leading scorer is Jaden Schwartz. 5 points in 6 games. Was he drafted in any case? I didn't even, let me look at this to see if Schwartz, he definitely wasn't on my radar. And yeah, he wasn't drafted in any of the leagues. And and then Justin Schultz, also not drafted in any of the leagues. And he's the second leading scorer, also with 5 points for Seattle. So it's been a team effort. The guy who was drafted the highest in most leagues was either like McCann or Beniers. And both of them only have 1 point. McCann only played 4 games. He's missed a couple. Beniers, I don't know, but I still feel like, I don't know, like it's kind of weird. Like I almost like don't want to ask you, like, should we be worried about Beniers? He's just a rookie. Like this is his first playoff experience. It's a big thing, and like Seattle's taken it to 7 games against Colorado, which was so incredible. So it almost feels like wrong to be like, should we be disappointed in the Seattle player right now? I guess we'll see how tonight's game goes.
Yeah, I don't think like I'm just gonna cut you off because I see where this is going, and you've got Schwartz and Schultz with 5 points in 6 games, and nobody else doing anything remarkable. And this is a continuation of the regular season for Seattle, where you've got maybe 1 or 2 guys step up at a time. Everyone else is there to provide the secondary and tertiary scoring when needed. But otherwise, it's like, hey, we're good. Like this is all we need. The one amazing thing, the one number that jumps out to me here is Jaden Schwartz's 27 shots on goal through 6 games of the series. There is no other Kraken player who has, only Oliver Bjorkstrand has even half as many. And Bjorkstrand is the next highest shot taker with 14 shots on goal to Schwartz's 27. Everybody else has less than 50% of Schwartz's shot count. So that's amazing for Jaden Schwartz to be able to get in. And he's only got 2 goals on all of that. In fact, no Kraken player has more than 2 goals. You've got Schwartz and Geeky. I'm laughing because like this team is basically a parody of itself at this point, and the way they spread everything out. You got Schwartz and Geeky are the only ones with multiple goals. And then you have like 14 guys who have a goal apiece. It's just crazy how much this team spreads everything around. Good for the Kraken for being able to do that. But I think the most interesting thing here is Jaden Schwartz just shooting the lights out. And this does not mean, though, that even if like things go well for the rest of however long the Kraken are in the playoffs, if Schwartz keeps this up, I'm still not that excited about him in fantasy for the same reason we've talked about all year about not being so excited about the Kraken in fantasy. Although one Seattle player who has raised his stock, Elon, do you know who I'm going to mention?
Obviously, Grubauer, right?
Yeah, Philly G. He's I don't know why I called him that.
He's been incredible.
No one's called him that before. 919 save percentage through 6 games. There's only been 1 game where there's only been 2 games where Grubauer has been below a 921 save percentage. And the Kraken actually came away with the win in one of those. And Grubauer stopped 20 of 22 shots for a 909, which is still decent. He's only had 1 really bad start. This is some of the most consistent hockey we've seen Grubauer play in a long time. And I would say that I think Seattle is probably getting their money's worth from Grubauer's contract for maybe the first time in it. And hopefully this can be like a launch pad for Grubauer to actually do this through the regular season too. Although, as we've mentioned, in Seattle, it's hard to do that when you only face 20 to 24 shots a night. But it's nice to see him have some success. And I hope it can come beyond a Colorado series where maybe he's got a little extra motivation, having formerly been on the team. And, they wouldn't give him the contract that he eventually landed. So, Grubauer, a bit of a coming out party here.
Yeah, though I mean that's not fair. But Grubauer, if I recall correctly, sort of stunned Colorado, right? It was like I think Colorado expected to sign him, and then he like got that contract with Seattle that no one was expecting after Seattle like had already signed Drieger, remember? And it seemed like Drieger was going to be the starter, and then all of a sudden Grubauer signed, and Colorado scrambled and ended up who did they Kemp? I guess then they got Kemper, and they won the cup, so I guess it worked out for them.
Yeah.
By the way, another player I should mention though that I am surprised didn't get a lot of points because he was drafted pretty high, Vince Dunn, after his incredible regular season for Seattle, where he had like 64 points. Real, this is like a Brandon Montour type breakout, but then he's, one of these Kraken to only have like 1 point so far in the playoffs. So I don't know, like Justin Schultz somehow has like 5 points or 6 points, like we said, and Vince Dunn hardly anything. I'm not going to read too much into it, but maybe I'll be honest. I'm a little down on Dunn for next year. Like, I don't know, like makes me a little less confident that he could do 64 points again when he disappears in the playoffs like this, though.
Yeah.
It was against Colorado.
No, well, like this is it, right? Dunn showed up and Dunn went away. And I think like you had fantasy weeks that were won or lost because Dunn showed up or went completely invisible. And I like this just fits in with what I mentioned already about the Seattle lineup. Guys come, guys go. And wanting to rely on any Kraken player like through the season, week in, week out, I think is a futile effort.
Yeah, and of course we should mention on the Colorado side, obviously the big news that have made things I think a lot more difficult for the Avalanche than they were expecting was Nichushkin being out of the lineup since game 1. There was some like pretty crazy story if you want to read into it. I guess we don't need to dive into it on this podcast about like the speculation of why he's been missing. But in his absence, yeah, we've got Arturi Lehkonen once again stepping up for the Avs, playing on the line with McKinnon and Rantanen, having himself a pretty decent playoffs, right? 6 points in 6 games for Lehkonen. So once again, like a steal for anyone who grabbed him in their KKPP draft. And yeah, I'm we'll see if Avalanche could get past the first round without Nichushkin, who's obviously such a big part of the team. But yeah, so it's just been the same as the regular season, right? Like kind of Comfer and Lehkonen as like these secondary guys that have been pretty valuable in fantasy. And then McKinnon and Rantanen doing everything they can, offensively at least, and Cale Makar, obviously, to take this team forward. But yeah, like you said, they haven't been able to get as many past Philip Grubauer as maybe they were expecting. Yeah, I don't have a question. I don't know.
Yeah,
you can comment on like Lehkonen or something. You could say how great Rantanen is.
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna comment on some team-wide numbers.
Ooh, I can start with a question just for fun. I have an idea.
Sorry. Can I comment on the team-wide and then you?
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead. This would be related though, potentially.
Okay.
Let's do it, and then you could decide.
No,
okay.
Please.
Okay.
Allow me. Okay. Well, Elon, I don't know if it would surprise you to know or not, but the Kraken have actually, like, they own the expected goals advantage at 5-on-5. Not by a ton. Like, it's a close series, but they do have the upper hand. They have a 51.3% of expected goals, which is like not like the margins are often slim in expected goals over the course of a season, or it can be the same over a playoff series. So just having any advantage is good, regardless of how small it is. But yeah, the Avalanche have actually been outplayed at 5-on-5 by the Kraken so far.
Very incredible stuff. I saw a tweet that apparently Seattle, if they win today, will be the first team in NHL history to beat the defending champion as their like first playoff series win. So,
kind of cool. I wonder like how out of how many opportunities,
like teams playing against the cup champion.
Yeah, like is this
2 times?
Yeah, well, how many times do you think it's happened?
I don't know. I'm sure Allison could tell us.
Like, it's rare that like teams expand and exist in the league. It's rare that teams win the Stanley Cup.
Fair.
It's even rarer that they face each other in the playoffs.
Okay, here's a question for you about Colorado. Okay. I think in the KKPP drafts in general, Nathan McKinnon was taken very high, averaged like 3rd overall, like as low as 2nd overall, as high as 6th overall is like the latest. And McKinnon has been good, 6 points in 6 games. Nowhere near as good as Mikko Rantanen, who has 9 points in 6 games, who he was also taken obviously super high, but generally McKinnon always taken first. If you make it to the next round and you decide you want to take a Colorado player and they're both available, you still go McKinnon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like Rantanen, even in the regular season, didn't Rantanen have more points? Like I got to go look this up right now. But like Rantanen, I feel like has been not in McKinnon's shadow, but like I feel like everyone just assumes like you go McKinnon first, then Rantanen. Well, and just straight up points and not worry about shots. Like, and every Rantanen's time so good.
And every time McKinnon's been injured, like Rantanen has stepped up and been fantastic, right? So like that's been exciting. In points in the regular season, McKinnon was on a 128 point pace versus Rantanen's 105 point pace. Although you could say that for the games McKinnon was playing, he always had Rantanen, and for the games Rantanen was playing, he didn't always have McKinnon. If you wanted to try and
big brain right there,
yeah. But I'm just seeing like Rantanen has scored on a quarter of his shots, and this is not to take. He's always been a high percentage converter. He converted on 18% of his shots this year, and that's not abnormal. Actually, the lowest shooting percentage for Rantanen over his career was 14.2%, and that was last year, and that's a solid like 2 to 3% below his career shooting percentage marks. This guy is a high efficiency converter. And sorry, I'm distracted. Florida just tied it. There's like a minute left in the game. I think they were on a power play. I've been trying not to be too distracted by this game.
Brandon Montour scored. I'm seeing
this series has been crazy. Like game 6 was wild. It was so much fun to watch. Okay. But what I was saying was that Rantanen, 6 goals on 24 shots, McKinnon, 3 goals on 31 shots, which is also actually about his shooting percentage too. Like McKinnon's like this 10 or 11% shooter. So what am I saying here? I'm still saying I just trust McKinnon to be like the best, like one of the best players in the world. And Rantanen's up there, but I think he's still like not like all world elite. He's close to it, but he's not quite where McKinnon is.
Let's say you have to either take Rantanen ahead of McKinnon. This is a stupid question now. You could either take Rantanen ahead of McKinnon or Draisaitl ahead of McDavid, because Draisaitl also outpointed McDavid in the first round.
I would take.
I don't know what my question is.
Well, no, it's a ridiculous question, but I'm going to play along, and I'm going to say I would take Draisaitl ahead of McDavid before I took Rantanen over McKinnon. All right. Maybe that's a really. It's like a completely useless question, but it's still a really interesting one. Who would you pick? I just feel like Draisaitl. Yeah. Okay.
Because he's like probably the second most, like I expect if I were doing a new fantasy draft right now, I would take McDavid, then Draisaitl, then maybe McKinnon, maybe then Rantanen. So, I just like the Oilers guys a little better to have that crazy upside. Anyway, that doesn't even really make sense then because it's over McDavid. Anyway, I don't even understand. Brian,
we need a full episode
on this to break
down. Yeah.
Just to understand the question. By the way, yeah, it's really wild to me that I'm looking at the box score of a hockey game right now, Florida, Boston, and the winner is going to play Toronto in the second round. Like just the fact that they're like fighting for the chance to play Toronto in the next round. It's still hard for me to believe, but I'm really excited that Brian, we got to finish up the show so we can go watch this overtime. It's gonna be fun. But that means we have 15 minutes, right? Because they're going to go to overtime. And then we have time. So just enough time to take one last break. Then we'll come back. We'll finish up our talk of the first round. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So stick with us. We'll be back soon. Okay, we are back, Brian. Which series haven't we talked about yet? I feel like we haven't mentioned Carolina and the Islanders, which is like not nice, right? But I mean, that's everyone.
They weren't nice to us. It was not like a fun series to watch at all. And I don't expect Carolina to be a fun team to watch really at any point of the playoffs unless they play a team that forces them to open up. And I don't see the Rangers or Devils being it. I don't even know that I see the Leafs, Bruins, or Panthers being it. Like, I think it would have to be against a team in the West. It would have to be like Edmonton or Colorado. I'm trying to think of any, maybe probably not even Vegas. There's very few teams that can force the Hurricanes to have to play outside of their comfort zone or try and adapt and play a different game. Like Carolina does what they do, and they do it so freaking well. And it doesn't make for so much fun or excitement, especially when they're playing the Islanders, who are like, I don't know, I'm not to really put the Isles down, but like they're kind of like the baby Canes, right? Like they'd be very happy to play the game the Canes play, and like some of their successes come from playing the way Carolina plays, but they can't quite do it as well now. And Sorokin gave it his best shot, and I think that is like the whole series. Do we need to talk much more about it?
Well, I don't know. It was interesting that Frederik Andersen came in for that last game. He also was injured last year, don't forget. So Andersen finally gets his playoff win with Carolina, or at least first one in a while. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see now what Carolina does. I was seeing some tweets today that maybe they will alternate, which would be fun. I want to see a team alternate goalies in the playoffs. I feel like if it works so well in the regular season, why not try it in the playoffs? And like, yeah, Ranta and Andersen both seem like guys that maybe you don't want to play every game, but could be decent if you give each of them a rest after every game. So that's one storyline I'll be interested in. Yeah, so you look at the scoring leaders on this team, it's like so predictable and boring. Like Aho was great, 7 points in 6 games, like great, but not like incredible. You know, like just like Sebastian Aho, point per game, not 100 points, 100 point per game. Then you had like Brent Burns, 5 points in 6 games. Obviously, Svechnikov not being there was no fun. And then after that, it was just like, yeah, Jarvis, Nason, and then like the people who did nothing. Unfortunately, Teravainen, well, he only played twice, so fair. What about Shane Gostisbehere? We were talking about a bunch of RFAs or UFAs that are like earning some money in these playoffs. Gostisbehere, man, like this was the worst. I guess like it's probably fun for him because he's gonna go. You know, I always think about it in terms of fantasy value and like points. Like obviously, Gostisbehere is happy to be on a cup contender, and maybe he'll be able to go on a run here because he was on Philly forever. Did he even play a playoff game? I guess Philly did have that one year where they made the playoffs. People were excited about them. Then they were crazy bad the next year. Then he went to Arizona, so it must be fun for him to actually be on this good team. But on the flip side, he doesn't play many minutes. He's been averaging like 16 minutes a game. He has no points. Pretty much a non-factor. So I don't know. It's going to be hard for him to justify asking for a big contract.
Well, what's he supposed to do in Carolina?
Yeah, true.
I think is the question. Like
earn more ice time by being better in practice. I don't know.
No, I think he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Like he's not shooting like 7 shots in 6 games. I don't know if that's part of the plan. But it
barely
is
plays. He doesn't have enough ice time to take a lot of shots.
I guess that's it. I'm trying to see. He gets. I'm trying to dig deep into the numbers we don't usually get into here when talking about player value. But he gets 77% of Carolina's offensive zone starts so far in these playoffs. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm still looking through just to see if there's anything I can really gather. He has been mostly winning the shot share battle. So I think like this is. I don't think Gostisbehere went to Carolina to like. I think he went to like maybe provide some offensive depth on the blue line, but not to really be a producer back there. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. So I don't know if he's really hurting his value. I think he really raised it in Arizona compared to what we might have expected to see from him. But actually he's got like when he's on the ice, the Canes have a 55% share of the shot attempts. They have, let's see here, a 48% share of the expected goals. So like Gostisbehere is doing okay, Elon. And the offense around him actually hasn't been great. And I don't know how much he personally is to blame for that. But I feel like I've already talked too long about Shane Gostisbehere. Good for him. He's been in 3 playoff series before this one, lost all 3 with Philly, finally making it to the second round. Way to go, Shane.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to see where he goes in the offseason. I'm just curious to see if another team's gonna like pay him big, money long term, or if it's gonna be more like a 1-year contract, maybe like what Klingberg got this year. Then he has to prove himself again. On the Islanders side, I guess everyone was disappointing, right? Like I was pretty stoked going into the series about like Barzal being back. He was no Mark Stone. He came back and got 2 goals, just fine, like in 6 games. Horvat didn't do much, just 2 points himself. I was all excited about Anders Lee as like a sleeper pick late because he'd be playing with Barzal and Horvat. Obviously, that didn't work out too well. Probably the biggest like surprise impressive guy was Kyle Palmieri that continued his hot run from the end of the year, 5 points in 6 games. Maybe Palmieri is someone you consider as like a last round pick in fantasy drafts next year to see if he can continue this. But yeah, overall, not too much excitement. Oh, like Dobson also was a big disappointment. Oh well.
Brock Nelson delivered as he always does with 5 points in 6 games. Yeah, Dobson's draft stock has gone way down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where are you drafting him? Like I think like he's probably a 45-point player. Maybe he gets to 50, but I'm not that excited to grab him.
I mean, I will say if I want to be like glass half full, I do still think that Horvat and Barzal together, maybe not against Carolina, like this amazing team, but like against like most standard teams, it's like a really good combination and on the power play. And I feel like Dobson's still going to be there on the power play with them. And I feel like something exciting could happen there. So I am excited about that. That's my reason to think, because we didn't really get to see, like, it seemed like things were cooking when Horvat first got there and then Barzal got injured and we know what happened. But yeah, so that's what I'm looking to see there from Dobson. But yeah, hopefully you're getting him at value for sure. Definitely don't reach for him. And who knows, maybe like I wouldn't leave him undrafted. Like I would take Dobson, but yeah, I definitely wouldn't be taking him very high. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And what you said about Palmieri is interesting. Like he maybe is entering like not quite Brock Nelson territory. I drafted him late. I don't know if it was last year, the year before, or both. Like thinking that he could be a good late option. I'm not convinced that he is. Bo Horvat by the way, like talking about like Evan Bouchard really raising his stock towards the end of the season. Bo Horvat's completely tanked, right? Like and I mentioned like when he was acquired that like we weren't going to see this all the way through, but I definitely didn't expect Bo Horvat to be as cold as he's been since, I don't know, like this is going back. I'm looking at his game log.
Yeah, but
He's
Barzal was injured. That's why I just wonder if maybe he's a value guy next year.
Yeah, so there's definitely value to be found there, but even without Barzal, like I should expect more from Bo Horvat. He had just 2 goals over his final 19 games, shooting 3.5%, so 8 points in 19 games. Not great there in the regular season, and then just 2 points in 6 games against Carolina, who really shut him down. He only had 8 shots on goal throughout those 6 games in this series. So I expect better shooting from him in the regular season. I don't think he's going to be stuck down there, and he has Barzal coming back. So maybe he is a value guy next year, but definitely only value if you're drafting him where he's been for the most part of his career rather than where he was for the first half of this last season in Vancouver.
Oh yeah, definitely. We didn't really talk about the Kings. We talked about the Oilers side of that series, but going to LA, there is one player who really like stood out at the end of the regular season into the playoffs. I'm curious to get your take on. That's Victor Arvidsson, someone you used to be a huge fan of back when he was on Nashville. I still remember when you called him as being a breakout candidate when he had a lot of goals per minute, but didn't play a lot of minutes earlier in his career. Anyways, Arvidsson was having kind of a mess season until like the last quarter where he just went off 17 points in his final 18 games to end the regular season for the Kings. And then he kept it going in the playoffs, 7 points in the 6 games, 1 goal and 6 assists. So Arvidsson is someone that I don't know. I don't know about his draft stock for next year, but I'm into him. And also I like the fact that he was on the top power play for a lot of the series. Of course, like Fiala was injured for a lot of it, but like Arvidsson had been off the top power play for a lot of the regular season. I wonder, like, when things start next year, I wonder if he's earned himself another chance to be a top power play guy. Cause I think if that's the case, he could be someone that's really excited for next year. And, you look at the overall season points for Arvidsson and it was just a 59-point season, which is good, like better than last year for sure.
63-point pace.
Yeah, but like maybe he's showing himself to be back to being that guy that, that his breakout season with Nashville, he had 34 goals in 58 games. And so that's like a pace of like, 45 goals, like really impressive for goals and like 68-point pace. Maybe he has that capability to like, overall be better than what he was this year. Maybe he'll be some like a guy that you'll get at decent value in drafts. If you think that what he did to end the year was more representative of his skill versus the most of the season.
Yeah, Arvidsson was in my infamous tweet at the start of the season of guys who I had a feeling could be good this year, which turned out better than it was looking after the first couple months. But one of the reasons I thought that was because that I figured he had a decent shot at getting top power play time, which he didn't end up with. He only ended up with a 44% share of power play time. But on Arvidsson's way to that 63-point pace, he picked up 25 power play points from mostly the second unit, which on one hand is encouraging because it's like, yeah, this guy can produce on the power play. 10 of those points on the power play were goals. So like he had a shooting role on the power play. But if he continues to see like a sub 50% share of power play time, I can't expect Victor Arvidsson to produce those 25 power play points again, which would take him down below 60 points again. So I would like to see like more of a power play 1 role if that's available to him, which I'm not 100% sure it is. But if not, I think Elon, like you said, he was on this really great tear, Arvidsson, over the last quarter of the season. And I think just a little more consistency could go a long way. Plus his teammates weren't shooting so well with him on the ice last year, less than 7%, which is kind of like he's never been like his team is usually shot 8 to 9%, so it's not a huge drop, but it is one way that I could see Arvidsson lose a few power play points and still end up approaching or surpassing just by a little bit 60 points.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. I'm really excited with his breakup because I have him in my dynasty league. I only talk about people that I have in my dynasty league.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, speaking of you, the one guy that I don't have, and now I kind of wish I did, seems like the type of person I would have is like this guy who jumped onto the top line on Seattle. We should probably mention his name. What was it? Ty Carty?
I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but
yeah,
his first name is in his last name.
Yeah, TYE and then Carr and then another TYE. And yes, he's been playing with Beniers and Eberle. 2 games. He had a goal, I think, in his first game. So I don't know who he is. Brian. I guess one of my classic Brian. Who the F
Here we
is
go.
Ty Carty?
Yeah. Well, he didn't come completely out of nowhere in the Seattle system. Anyway, this was his first pro season. Carty's undrafted from Kingston, Ontario, finished his OHL career with the Sioux Greyhounds, was a big scorer as an overager, which is like what you should expect. And then in Carty's first pro season, 22 years old. Oh, I stumbled because his birthday is today as we're recording. And so I
Happy
don't
birthday, Ty. Wow,
yeah,
playing a game 7 and you're on your
wow.
birthday. Exciting.
Happy birthday. So I don't know if if the age I'm looking at has already like ticked up by one or not.
All right, let's do the math right now, Brian. He's born in 2001.
He's born in 2001.
Just turned 22.
22. Okay, so this was his age 21 season, his first pro season, and he had 57 points in 72 games with the Coachella Valley Firebirds of the AHL, Seattle's minor league affiliate. 28 goals, 29 assists, and I'm just seeing how he fared compared to, like, he was one of the team's leading scorers behind, who do we have here? Max McCormick, who's 30 years old and like a journeyman AHLer, and Cole Lind, who I'm just checking into him and seeing he was a 33rd overall pick in 2017 by Vancouver. I'm not sure how he ended up in Seattle, but there he is. So yeah, Elon, this is the sort of guy you'd be interested in your dynasty if he's already getting a look at the top line. But the the caveat about Seattle players stands, especially for young Seattle players. The upside is limited, but it is fun to see somebody jump from the AHL and make an instant impact in the NHL. Though I think that goal he scored in his first game has been his only postseason point.
Yeah, it's only been 2 games, but yeah, we'll see how he does today. And yeah, the reason why, we joke that this is the type of guy I'd have in my dynasty league is because I always trade away all my high picks and prospects to go for the win. And so I end up with these, but hey, I ended up with Tommy Novak. I got him out of free agency and look how that turned out. I'll mention him, Brian, here's like an idea I had that I did. I'm just going to throw it out there. Most people won't care, but if you're in a dynasty, like Bangers league, I added at the end of the season this guy named Dmitry Voronkov, who's a Columbus prospect. And it's like the news has just come out today that he's like almost for sure. He was playing in like the KHL finals and they just ended. And the news is that he's like coming over almost for sure. And like the rumor is it's like going to be a 2-year contract. And if you look at his numbers last year in the KHL, he was like a Boone Jenner, basically. Like, like around, not a point per game, but like half point per game ish, but with power play, like lots of hits, lots of blocks. So face-off wins. So if you're in a league that counts it all, and it's a deep dynasty, look, I don't know. Look, what do I know anyways? I'm just like looking at numbers here. But and also the vibe on Twitter when I look at Voronkov is people in Columbus are like excited to have him come over and be like a second or third liner. So anyways, this is what you can tell. This is a playoff episode deep in.
Is
so
I'm
is
Alexandre Texier owned in your dynasty league?
He's taken.
Okay. All right. Because he's coming back too.
But also he's like not minors eligible because he's played more than 82 games. So
I see.
I don't know if I'm going to be adding someone like Texier who I'd be forced to keep on my roster. But if I could get a swing guy like Voronkov, could be good. But yeah, Texier I know is coming back and that should be interesting. We'll see. Columbus is one of those teams that they will be good soon. It's just a matter of when. Like, they just need all these young players to,
well, they need everyone to stay healthy.
Well, that will help
that's number one. And they need, some of their prospects to just step into the lineup. Like they are a team who could have a big swing in how well they do next year compared to this past year, considering all the injuries they dealt with.
Mm-hmm. All right, but Brian, I see that the game has resumed now, Florida and Boston, which means we got to get out of here and watch this very exciting overtime. So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this round 1 playoff episode. We'll probably be off next week. Stay tuned to our Twitter. We'll announce anything, or honestly, we just chat with the patrons and we'll tell you what's going on in there. But I think we'll finally take a week off because last week we did actually record a patron cast. If you didn't hear and you want to check it out, we had a lot of fun with the patrons. That episode's available to anyone who becomes a patron for just $1 right now. You could sign up, join our community, join the Discord, chat it up with us. We're having a good time. And yeah, you can check out this patron cast, which was a bonus episode we did just for the patrons. That's keepingkarlsson.com/patron for more information. And we're going to be ramping up pretty soon. We've been talking behind the scenes about the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. We're really excited for season 9. Brian, it's already season 9 at the couple. I can't believe it. So that's coming up.
Crazy.
Yeah, next year, me, you, and of course, Kevin have been working hard and we're going to be announcing that soon. So yeah, if you're a patron, you'll know first how to register, how to get in. It's going to be great. In the meantime, for the people, congrats to everyone who's advanced to round 2 of the KKPP. I'll be setting up those leagues as soon as the game ends tomorrow night between New Jersey and the Rangers. Brian, hopefully you'll be one of them and good luck to you. My wife took a team. Oh, how did Josie do? Your wife also took a team. Dina's going to the next round.
Oh, yeah. Well, Josie, it doesn't, she's got a shot. A lot is going to ride. I haven't seen what her update, but she has players in all the game sevens. So there's a lot riding on these last few games.
Good luck. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My team will not make it.
What's Tina's team name? I was trying to find it on the list.
Total Eclipse of the Heart, which was a really fun name, except not as good when Joel Eriksson Ek ended up not playing. So like named after the player that gave her nothing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now I can find her.
Okay. All right. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. I think I already said that. So I'm just going to pass it over to Brian to read the credits. Take us out of here.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by our, hang on. I gotta pull up my thing.
Our good friend Dauber from Dauber Hockey.
Rather than like fake it and like do it at like 50% speed. I should actually just load the thing. All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Adam, Aaron, Ivan, Andrea, Tom, Derek, David, Rob, Ricard, and of course, Patty. Thank you all so much for your continuing support. Elon, you and Shams are still tweeting out all relevant game day news and line changes and all the good stuff over at gamedaytweets.com. Logo art by brandonweeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dauber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, hockeygoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, and Elite Prospects.
Great job, as always, Brian. This was so fun catching up with you, and looking forward to doing this again in probably a couple weeks to talk about how the Leafs made it past round 2, hopefully. But yeah, what should I do? Well, I'm enjoying for the first time in my life watching a round 2 playoff series in this beautiful city. Anything I should keep in my mind while I'm doing that?
Yeah, I mean, like wherever you're celebrating, however you're celebrating, please keep doing what you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Great job. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us, which may have just been Norm and Andy.
Yeah.
Oh,
thanks.
And you know who I am.
I see Andy left, but thanks, Norm. I didn't see you. I didn't have the chat open tonight.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, Norm said some great stuff that you missed.
Damn. I'm gonna have to watch the replay on YouTube.
Oh yeah, you can do that. All right, but yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks everyone watching after the fact. Please download the episode.
484.
Yeah.
I feel like it. Oh yeah, it was 484.
This is 484.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. But we've had so many more episodes. Because I guess
I know. What do you want to do?
Also, we do like part 1 and part 2.
Did we change maybe we changed the naming scheme this year?
Yeah. Maybe I want to get to 500 first. And then let's do it.
Okay. 500, like a fake 500.
Yeah.
Where it's actually like 700. Yeah.
Yeah. We could change it if anyone has any good ideas.
Breakaway Matty Kachuk stopped. Oh. I'm also I'm watching on a stream and I have an over-the-air antenna that I can access when I'm not recording.
Okay.
And which won't have the latency problem. So bye.
See ya.
Thanks for the great show. I'll upload the show.